Hey everybody, happy Monday and welcome to another episode of TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon. Today is Monday, April 5th. Happy Easter to everybody who does celebrate, as well as Passover. I can't believe we are in the first full week of April already. The time is just flying by. And speaking of time, we have got a great lineup on today's TechStrong TV broadcast. We start off with an interview between Alan and Robin Purohit, who is the CEO and co-founder of Paratus.ai. Paratus.ai has the first AI-powered assistant to automate and improve support for DevOps and application developers. And they have initial support for Kubernetes on cloud-native forums. It's a great technology, and Robin and Alan have a great time discussing it, so I hope you can join us for that interview. After that, Alan speaks with Andre Christ, who is the CEO and co-founder of a company called LeanIX. They have acquired a SaaS management startup called CleanShelf. And it also has a microservice intelligent product which automatically creates a microservices catalog that integrates with DevOps toolchains. Awesome stuff, awesome technology, and another awesome interview. So one definitely worth checking out. After that, we have Brendan O'Leary from GitLab comes on and gives us the monthly lowdown in the lab segment. What's happening in this month's GitLab update, always worth checking out. And then we have a great panel discussion regarding the recently announced assessment of DevOps capabilities. It is an assessment program that has been announced by the DevOps Institute. It helps organizations assess where they are in their DevOps journey and what they can do to improve their DevOps standing. It's a great conversation that Alan has with Louise Cermak, who's principal consultant at Catapult CX, Garima Bapai, who is the founder community of practice at DevOps Canada, and Brendan O'Reilly, who is with Dacia DevOps. Great conversation they have. This is one of three sessions panel discussions that we've had about the assessment of DevOps capabilities. The first one was, I believe, about 2 weeks ago. Mitch Ashley spoke with a panel. I'll actually be speaking with some other DevOps Institute ambassadors about the assessment of DevOps capabilities tomorrow. So you can check out my interview with them tomorrow about the same thing. But it's a great conversation, and it's a great tool that organizations can use. So definitely check this one out. After that, we have a conversation between Alan and Philippe Humeau, who is the CEO of CrowdSec. You may remember we've had Philippe on before. He talks to us about a new platform that his organization has come up with, which is basically crowd-based security. It was developed to analyze user behavior and provide an adapted response to all kinds of attacks. It's really, really cool technology. They also, because it is crowdsourced, all members of the CrowdSec community are basically helping each other stay safe, and it's a great time. Each time an IP is blocked, all community members are informed so they can also block it. So it's a great technology, as I've said before, and it's definitely worth checking out. So give this interview a listen for sure. After that, I come back with the headlines, and then I have a conversation with Fleming Shi, who is the CTO of Barracuda Networks. He and I talk about some of the new findings around the rise of vaccine-related phishing attacks. You know, phishing has been a long-term problem over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. First, phishing attacks really focused on getting information about COVID-19 in general and COVID-19 testing, and now it has shifted to COVID-19 vaccinations. So Fleming and I discussed some of the phishing attacks that Barracuda has seen and some of the things that organizations can do to continually protect their data and their employees from these phishing attacks. After that, I have a conversation with John Knisely, who is the principal at Fortress IQ. we talk about how the pandemic has changed the discussion around digital transformation. Removing transformation fatigue has been, kind of a non-issue over the pandemic, as organizations have renewed their efforts to accelerate their digital transformation journeys. Before the pandemic, a lot of organizations were doing a whole lot of talking about digital transformation, but really we're not doing much to actually advance it. So that changed with the pandemic, as so many of us recognize. And John and I actually talk about how digital transformation, that conversation needs to shift now to the back office to see the benefits. So before it was all customer facing, now we really need to look at digital transformation with the internals of the organizations, if you know what I mean. So it's a great conversation. After that, I have the webinars preview, as I always do. And then Mitch Ashley comes on with his Analyst Corner segment. He speaks with Andrew Manby, who is an Associate VP of Digital Solutions at HCL Software. They talk about the role of low-code and no-code in the world of IT and professional developers. Traditionally we talk about low-code, no-code in terms of citizen developers and non-developers, but low-code and no-code technologies are actually a pretty vital part of a lot of IT organizations' software and development stacks. So Andrew and Mitch kind of suss out a little bit what low-code and no-code platforms mean for development in general, and actually kind of goes along with our topic conversation for our topic spotlight for April on DevOps.com, which is low-code, no-code technology. So great stuff there. All right, as I said before, this is a great lineup today, and this is a long TechStrong TV broadcast, a little longer than usual, so I hope you can stick around and join us for everything. We are going to get things kicked off right after this commercial message. All right, welcome back. Kicking things off today is an interview between Alan and Robin Purohit, who is the CEO and co-founder of Paratus AI. They talk about Paratus's technology as the first AI-powered assistant to automate and improve support for DevOps and application developers, and initial support for Kubernetes on its cloud-native platform, or cloud-native forums. It's a great conversation. Let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another TechStrong TV segment. My guest this segment is Robin Purohit. Robin is co-founder, CEO of a company that I'm going to let him introduce because I just spaced on the name. Robin, help me out here.
I'm CEO of Paratus.ai.
Okay. And that's an interesting name. Before we even get into what the company does, talk to us. How did you come up with the name?
Yeah, Paratus is actually Latin for expert. And it works perfectly with what we're doing. What our company does is provides expert technical advice with zero friction, right? So it's a perfect metaphor.
So a frictionless technical advice company. Excellent. So, you know what? Let's talk a little bit about you, though, Robin. You've been around the block a little bit. Give people a little sense of your background, your experience, how you came to found the company.
Yeah, so this is my third decade in the tech business, believe it or not, and started up in Canada and left a big company job to do my first startup as a co-founder and sold that to HP fairly quickly. And I kind of got the bug. So when I came out to the Valley, I kind of flipped myself from being a hardcore architect and engineering manager to a product manager, and also moved from building systems to building software. And so that journey took me from the late 90s on to big growth curves at Veritas Software, where I ran the product line until we sold to Symantec for a lot of billions of dollars.
I remember that.
Then it took me to Mercury Interactive, where I ran kind of all the emerging tech businesses there, and so we sold for a bunch of billions to HP.
Yep, I
And then
remember that one too.
I ended up staying in HP during the Herd era, running the IT management and security software businesses for them, and with a whole string of acquisitions, including Opsware and ArcSight and a bunch of others. And then since then, I've been doing a mixture of startups. This is my fourth startup. Sold the last one to Salesforce. It was a cloud data integration company. But I'm super excited about this one because I've always been intrigued by AI, but really hit me about a couple of years ago after I sold my last company that now's the time. The technology is maturing very rapidly. The cost of doing interesting things with data has come down dramatically. And so you can create things, very interesting things very quickly. So that's why I decided my next startup would be an AI startup.
Love it. I love it. First blush, this seems more of a consulting people expertise than it does, an app service kind of thing.
Well, actually, we were trying to flip the script completely around. I think one of the challenges with the AI enterprise industry has been probably too much consulting, a lot of big money POCs with some future return because it's a sexy thing, right? And we saw this with the big data era, 10 years ago, where everybody was building data lakes with no purpose.
Yeah, because you had to have a Hadoop engineer.
Exactly, you're right. And you had to have, I usually had multiple data lakes, to be honest, and started pumping data in without really a plan with what you're going to do with all that data. So you end up with a lot of messes. And then eventually things matured, and now the big data industry is kind of just another foundational building block for analytics and now also for AI. So I think we're at that turning point too for enterprise AI. I think that kind of big spend era is over, and now people are looking for out-of-the-box value in products that deliver some sort of ROI within the first year, and then get better and better as you feed it more data and use it more. So that's what we're trying to do.
Excellent. So the company's fairly new, correct?
Yeah, we've been around for a couple of years, and like everybody, we did push the big reset button a year ago today when we realized this era of kind of enterprise POCs is going to be much tougher game. And we wanted to have a kind of more product-led growth company, which is kind of a really exciting thing about what we've been able to do in the last year.
So tell us about that then.
Yeah, so just going back to the tech, right? What the core tech for us is, we call it cloud-based recommendation engine. So a lot of people are familiar maybe with recommendation engines in their personal life. If you're watching Netflix, you get recommendations on the next movie to watch or next show. Or if you're using an Amazon assistant, they're always popping up and telling you, what you should buy in their store as you're browsing around on something else. Or more interestingly, maybe Grammarly, So the concept that we're pursuing is, think of Grammarly for geeks, right? So how do you, while you're looking for an answer, how do you find a way to surface potential answer or even help answer that question faster with a very simple browser assistant that pops up and tells you, I have help for you, and guides you to hopefully what is going to be something that will resolve your question.
Excellent. So someone said something to me the other day that, the old saying of necessity is the mother of invention. There's a new saying now, necessity is the, I don't remember because I'm old. But the bottom line of it, though, is that the pandemic and this, way we've learned to do business this last year has led to a ton of innovation, right? In how even something like, what you guys are doing, right? How do you deliver this expertise when you can't meet face to face, you can't go on site, you can't go, on location, and if not but for you would have never tried this problem. Is that the case? You think you'd?
Well, I think it was in our vision from the very beginning. But when the world changes, you have to take stock in saying, what do you really want to be? So we just decided to accelerate our vision and kind of put the kind of bigger enterprisey POCs to the side. And it did force us just to get clarity on what have we learned? What do we really want to be? And let's go do it. Hopefully we'll succeed. Startups have a high failure rate, but we're very optimistic about what we'll be able to do and the interest. The key thing also is to focus on where's all the demand coming from. So like even before this last year, the concept of very simple to install product-led growth products was already catching fire. In fact, the valuation of the companies associated with that model are even better than SaaS companies, right? But you've seen, with Zoom and Slack and go down the list, just an explosion of interest in those. So for us, since we're providing technical advice, we also saw that this era, post-pandemic, is accelerating everybody's move to cloud native, right? Everybody's trying to get to the contemporary way of building, cool stuff in IT that adds value for the business. And the cloud native revolution is now a mainstream phenomenon. And so that's the area we ended up focusing our company on.
Excellent. So, as we sit here today, a year post, lockdown, bordering up of in-person stuff, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe another 2, 3, 4 months, people are going to emerge. We're going to go back. I don't think we're going to go back to exactly the way it was before, but we will go back to, POCs and in person and all of that. Do you see, so the obvious thing is, well, Robin, you should do a hybrid thing, right? A little of this and a little of that, a little of the new, a little of the old. Is that the way you see it going down, or how do you see it?
Absolutely. I think the best way to scale a startup is product-led growth gets you in the door, gets interest, gets users. And then it's probably the best quality lead you can hope for. And the thing about AI is that when somebody gets excited, they find a whole bunch of other problems for you to tackle, and they have a whole bunch of other data that they want to give you to help you solve that problem. So our view is we'll probably do those kind of more strategic projects. We'll do them selectively, once we've got some enthusiasm and advocacy in their customer, and they have a clear problem with a lot of data they can provide. So that way we know that we're going to be successful, right? We take their data, drive a lot of use on it, build on what we've already done, and then take it to another level. Got it.
So I think we've looked at the business, Robin, from 500,000 feet. Let's come down now, to the ground level here. So what else is new? What beyond the last year, we get that. But what are you guys really focusing on now? What are you really seeing? What it's kind of the battlefronts that you're waging war in.
Yeah, it's going back to, you also want to focus on where there's a supply and demand gap, right? So right now,
it's good for the CEO to focus on that.
Yeah. And the demand that we see, there's about 6.5 million cloud native developers, according to CNCF, and it's growing at almost 40% year over year, right? So that's got a good stat on this mainstream phenomenon that now is hitting. So we started thinking about where are people going for help? Because, if you're Google or Facebook, you can hire those 10X engineers, pay anything you want for them. But as you go mainstream, a lot more people have to participate in cloud native development. So then we started looking at, Stack Overflow and GitHub are the classic places people go for help, particularly Stack Overflow. Over 100 million active users a month. I think it's the 5th most popular website in the world. Of all websites, believe it or not, right? But we were shocked to find, as we analyzed all the most popular cloud native forums, that almost 70% of the questions that have been posted were never answered. So I said, okay, I think it's a great connecting place for sharing knowledge, but it's not an effective way to get help when you really need it yet. So we said, okay, I think that's a place that we can focus on, but how do we make it easy for people to get that help, right? Because you're not only going to look at Stack Overflow, but you're going to go to product forums for technologies you're interested in. You're going to join Slack channels and name your list. So that's where we decided to say, okay, well, let's kind of pre-train our recommendation engine on as much cloud native content as we can find, whether it's conversations happening on Stack Overflow or GitHub issues or vendor forums. Take all of the published content that we can find, and then use that to train recommendations to help people find answers in a very, very easy way. So what we announced actually today is that we're now on the Chrome store. So you have a Chrome extension that's free for a user, installs in 10 seconds. And it basically pops up when you're on any of these forums as you're looking at a cloud native question saying, hey, I have some advice for you. And here's some answers that are probably much more likely to get you to the resolution. And that's what we heard from, to talk to the users. They say, hey, we go to Google, we optimize our queries. Most often it takes us to Stack Overflow, but then we spend hours looking for the right answer. So we're trying to catch them in that moment and help them on the journey.
Yeah. It's funny, when I first started DevOps.com here at MediaOps, 2013 going into 2014, we looked at having a community-powered kind of Stack Overflow type of board, for DevOps questions and stuff. And so we spent a lot of time on Stack Overflow, right? Look, and we saw the same thing is, look, it's amazing crowdsourcing, right? The problem is it's everybody's job and nobody's job to necessarily answer you. and so if you've got something, look, if you've got a problem that a lot of other people are having, I mean, you get a lot of Me Too's and all that, chances are, you're going to get a nice discussion going.
Correct.
And get your stuff. But if you've got something that's a corner case or just not that mainstream,
right,
it could languish there. But I'm not banging Stack Overflow.
Place, right? There's all these specialty Slack channels or forums that pop up for very particular things, right? So.
Right, which are really kind of more specific. But the bigger issue is we live in a self-serve software world. We live in a self-serve technology world. So many of the services that we really rely on, right, are support is going to a Stack Overflow, going to a Slack channel, going to some sort of forum. And, and even the ones where you're paying to access that forum say something like, oh, we'll get back to you in 24 to 48 hour business days.
That's
and those problems always happen on, right. And it always happens on a Friday. So by next Tuesday, I might hear something. Maybe I'll hear something Tuesday or Wednesday. And it's tough when it's, when you're trying to get something done, it doesn't have to rise even to the level of mission critical. If it's important, just important, not mission critical, you still don't want to wait all that time to maybe get an answer. And so, I think it's one of the kind of soft-white underbellies of the whole way we do this SaaS-based, kind of business today.
Yeah, the culture has shifted, right? But I think the approach has not yet caught up. That's kind of my take, And so I don't think the culture is going backwards, right? We're in this open era of support and technical advice. So I think we've gone from a closed era where everything was a ticket to an open era where most people are trying to find help, in public, and opening a ticket is a last resort for good reason, because then you're just waiting longer, and you may not talk to the right person until the third conversation, right? So now we're going to the AI era, where how do you take everything that's known and help that person get to the answer wherever it's being discussed or wherever it's documented. I think the other thing we've noticed is that we talked about the demand problem, right? There's this huge demand for answers on these cloud native questions. There's also a supply problem. So on the supply side, how many people do you think have answered questions on cloud native questions in the last year? Like, just pick a number.
How many people have answered questions? I'll be really generous and say 400,000.
Yeah, so you're off by a couple of orders of magnitude. So what we actually found by looking at Stack and all the related, cloud native forums is that it's only like less than 3,000 people that are
really. Oh my God!
Shocked us. And then only 40% of those are answering 80% of the questions. So now you're talking about 1,200 people. So that goes to your best effort. So look, I think there's a lot of motivated people who want points in Stack Overflow. It makes them more employable and improves their street cred. But we need to make it easier for them. So one of the users of our assistant is somebody who is motivated to improve their rep. They want to be helpful, but we're going to make it easier for them to be helpful. And so we can broaden that base up by hopefully those 2 orders of magnitude of supply of people helping people. Right. And then you can put it in a product or service vendor's hand as well as part of where they can, add their own content into our system. And now they have even a smarter, source of knowledge to go tackle questions that might be more of those corner cases that you're talking about.
Excellent. Cool stuff. Robin, give us the name again and the web address.
Yeah. So the company is Peritus.ai.
Can you spell it? PER?
Peritus, and you can go to our website and download the extension, or you can go to the Chrome store and just search for us there as well.
Very cool. Hey, thanks for coming on TechStrong TV and telling us about this today. For our audience out there, go check it out. This might be just a ticket for you. Robin, continued success. Come back on and keep us posted, okay?
Awesome. Thanks for having me today.
All right. Peritus.ai. Right?
That's right.
Okay. This is Alan. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with another guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, next up, we've got conversation between Alan and Andre Christ, who is the CEO and co-founder of LeanIX. They acquired a SaaS management startup, which is called Clean Shelf, which is based out of San Francisco. They also have a new microservice intelligent product that automatically creates a microservices catalog that integrates with DevOps toolchains to provide that 360-degree transparency for cloud native applications, ownership, and dependencies. Lots to unpack in this conversation, so let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on another TechStrong TV segment. My guest for this segment is Andre Christ, who is the CEO co-founder of LeanIX. Andre, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hello, Alan. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Yep. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. Andre is coming to us from Germany today, so it's always a pleasure to have international guests join us. We appreciate you staying up. It's late in the afternoon here on the East Coast of the U.S., and so we appreciate you staying up to come on with us. Andre, I don't believe we've interviewed LeanIX here on TechStrong. Our audience may not be familiar with LeanIX, so I'm going to ask you to start off with, can you give us a little kind of company background and maybe a little bit of your own background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, more than happy to do so, Alan. LeanIX is a software as a service vendor, which was founded 9 years ago over here in Germany. We help today more than 400 mid to large size enterprises to create transparency in their IT landscape. We sometimes say we're something like the Google Maps for the IT in an organization. Just as Google Maps maps out the streets, the cities, the traffic, LeanIX maps out all the systems you have in the IT, all the interfaces, the data flows, and also highlights the risks in technology as an example. My background is I originally studied computer science and then started as a consultant at Deutsche Post DHL, where I spent 4 years advising the CIOs of the group until I eventually decided it's good time to go back and build a product. And that's why I started with my partner at the time, LeanIX, 9 years ago.
Excellent. Love it. So Andre, company was based in Germany. Any U.S. office? Today, what difference does it make anyway, actually? We all work remote anyhow. But I was going to ask if you had any U.S. presence, offices, or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the U.S. market is super important for us. So today, we do 40% of our revenue. So a lot of our customers out of the 400 are actually in the U.S. That's why we've decided a couple of years ago to open up an office in Boston. We have now more than 90 people in that office. We just recently did an acquisition, which allowed us to get new colleagues in the office in San Francisco and in Denver. So we now have actually 3 offices, and we can't wait to actually, at one point in time, to get back to the office. Until now, it's obviously all virtual in the US.
Yeah, we know all about that for sure. So what was the acquisition that brought offices in San Francisco and Denver?
Yeah, LeanIX has acquired a SaaS management tool provider, CleanShelf, a couple of days ago. And that company helps organizations to automatically discover, manage, and optimize their software as a service. So it's actually a very big topic and growing market. And we're excited to welcome that team. It's 40 employees, half of the team actually located in the US, and another half of the team located over here in Europe. So it's very exciting, not only for us as a company, but also to provide that offer to our customers in the next coming weeks.
Absolutely. So it discovers third-party SaaS apps that you're using within your IT infrastructure and somehow maps them, or what does it do?
Yeah, exactly. So let me give you some of the examples here, how that works and why that's necessary. Let's start with the latter. Today, everyone can actually buy software as a service. You just need a credit card and you actually go for it. And we all know that since Salesforce came to the market many, many years ago, they changed the way how software is procured in organizations. No longer there's just the IT buying software, but all the business units are doing it. And with SaaS, this is just accelerating. And we've seen last year with COVID kicking in, there's so much more tools being acquired, which are being used to work remotely, effectively together. And so it's becoming a big topic. The way CleanShelf does it as a SaaS discovery solution is it uses information from credit card systems, from financial systems like NetSuite or Workday or the like. And then it automatically checks it against the catalog of all the SaaS softwares out there in the world to understand what are you using. And then you can actually connect into those SaaS tools to get more information out of them. So for example, how many users do you have in that? When is the renewal taking place? So it's incredibly important to keep that managed in a good way and not do that manually in a spreadsheet, as an example.
Excellent. And this acquisition was just recently announced a few days ago, right?
Correct. The acquisition was announced a couple of days ago. We obviously work with the team for a couple of weeks now, are already in the middle of the integration and have informed our customers about the topic. And there's a lot of excitement now.
Yeah, no, it should be exciting times. You guys also made another recent announcement over at Lean.ix, correct? Why don't you, if you don't mind, share with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what we announced just recently is that we've launched an additional product called Microservice Intelligence. So when SaaS management sits more on the corporate IT side, microservice intelligence is much more interesting for the product IT in a company. So if you are building products and applications, and you do that with your own development teams, very quickly it's you have a hard time understanding what are all the services you have built and are out there. Microservice intelligence automatically creates a catalog of all of the microservices. It automatically discovers that from the CI/CD tool chains where you build the software or the Kubernetes environments where you deploy the software. So it's very convenient for engineering and product teams to place our software in to create a central microservice catalog. And I'm happy to share a bit more examples on how that helps, if that makes sense.
So this is something I know a little. So is it using sort of like a Dynatrace kind of technology to find the microservices that are running?
It's similar or it's adjacent. So I think one of the use cases, if you think about like the Dynatrace and Datadogs of the world, which do application performance monitoring, they have set great standards, understanding all the requests and all the issues in operations. The issue usually is if you look at that, you get a very operational view on your services. What you don't get is you don't get like a catalog of ownerships, of dependencies, with regards to like what are the technologies being used in there, the libraries. So while APM solutions are more used in operations and in monitoring, what we do with microservice intelligence is much more on creating and establishing catalog for the teams who build the software in the first place. Those tools can go hand in hand very well and are complementary actually.
Sure. You know, I was talking to a security company earlier, and you know the old maxim, right? You can't defend what you don't know. Is truer than ever, and then when we get into these cloud native environments that are so often, you know, microservices, APIs, a lot of the microservices communicate via API, right? Around securing these environments becomes, I mean, because the attack surface is multiplied, right? Rather than having that one monolith, you got all these microservices, each one of them potentially vulnerable, potentially a vector or a surface for attack, not to mention the APIs they're running into and the different containers. And you know, it's just like it broadens the attack surface. So it calls for, you know, a different way of looking at security.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I think the big trick now is now that you have so many services, and we all know that this famous term of like the two pizza team, which is like taking care of one service. So you have like relatively small teams which build multiple of those services. Now keeping track who has built a service for what purpose with what technology is becoming more difficult for engineering leaders or technology managers to actually set up a good governance on that. And I think that's why it's important to come up with a very lean approach, which is developer friendly still, to create that overview. And this is exactly what we do with Lean.ix.
Excellent. So it would seem that with this microservices offering, it kind of moves you squarely into the DevOps world, yes?
That's true. I think what we're observing is that there's an increasing need for managing the architectures and the portfolios, not only in the corporate or internal IT world, but also bringing the internal IT and the product IT closer together. So in the past, you could say there was the CIO who is responsible for the corporate IT or internal IT, and then the CTO who's responsible more for the product. But the truth is, there's no great app or user interface or website which does not rely on data from the back office systems. So the CTO and the CIO have to talk better to each other, and those landscapes need to work closer together. That's, I think, trend number one. And the second trend is more companies consider the software they are building more as a product. So they continuously need to maintain it. It's no longer that they only do a one-off project and then it lives forever, but a product needs care and oversight, and it evolves. So technology is aging. So you have to keep this overview, and that's why we believe we bring together those two worlds, the corporate IT and the product IT world, with this move into the DevOps space, and we allow companies to become more product centric, which is very important at these days.
Absolutely. Andre, we got so involved in the technology, we didn't get into kind of nuts and bolts. So how is this offered as an offering? Is it a SaaS-based solution? How is it priced? Can you give us some details?
Yeah, all LeanIX products which we provide are all software as a service. They are hosted on a secure infrastructure. So LeanIX is a SOC 2 Type 2 certified company, and fulfilling quite high standards to provide this as a software as a service. And then our models in terms of the licensing model are usually consumption-based. That means, for example, in our enterprise architecture product, we charge by the number of applications. So the more applications a company has, the higher tier a company pays. And it's very similar in our microservice intelligence product. The more microservices you have, the more you pay for it. And it's very easy then to understand if I want to manage a microservice, you have like a cost per year for it, no matter how many developers you have. So it's very scalable pricing and very foreseeable, and allows everyone in the company actually to access the content. So we're not limiting people by having a complicated license scheme, but rather go with a very consumption-based approach here.
Love it. Andre, we're running out of time, but for people who want to get more information, where can they go?
Yeah, I invite everyone to check out our website. It's www.leanix.com, leanix.net, sorry for that, leanix.net. And we're providing information on our products there, and offer, of course, a 30-day trial where you can try out the product and see it in real.
Any limitations other than it's timed to 30 days?
No, there's no limitations. So it's we've worked with hundreds of organizations during those trials, so they can really try it out and test it. Looking forward to see all the feedback coming in.
Fantastic. Well, Andre, thank you so much for joining us here on TechStrong TV today. Good luck with the recent acquisition. Good luck with new products. Come back and visit us again.
Happy to do so, Alan. It was a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. Andre Christ, CEO, co-founder at LeanIX, here on TechStrong TV. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with our next guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of serverless and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
All right, next up, Brendan O'Leary joins us to discuss some of the things that are happening in the monthly GitLab update. It is GitLab's The Lab segment. So let's give it a listen.
Hello, friends, and welcome to The Lab, a monthly show where we look at all of the latest and greatest developments in software development, DevOps, and the cloud. I'm your host, Brendan O'Leary, and I'm coming to you today from Annapolis, Maryland, on the East Coast of the United States. For those who don't know me, I'm a developer evangelist at GitLab, which means I get to talk to amazing folks throughout the industry and engineering space about what it's really like to get code shipped to production. In today's episode, we'll be talking about, as always, GitLab's latest release, a little bit about Kubernetes and what it is and its relationship to GitLab, and then a really exciting upcoming event about Kubernetes called KubeCon. And so let's get right into it. First, as always, on the 22nd of this month, an amazing GitLab release was announced and released, and that is GitLab 13.10. So I'm really excited about a lot of the developments made in GitLab 13.10, but I want to highlight just a few of them here because I think they're the really important ones, or maybe just the ones that I'm most excited about. So first is the GitLab runner for Red Hat OpenShift being GA'd. So OpenShift is a place where a lot of enterprises have their apps and want to be able to ship code quickly and easily. And so the GitLab runner being available on OpenShift makes it a lot easier to do that from within GitLab and using the native tooling. You also can open a web console to the OpenShift cluster so that administrators can discover and select the operators to install on that cluster, all with the GitLab runner and the GitLab integration. It's really exciting stuff. We're also scaling vulnerability management, right? We've all seen a lot of, supply chain issues and vulnerabilities coming through. And so we want to allow security teams to do bulk status updates to modify the status of vulnerability across their entire group or entire instance of GitLab at one time. That way, the security team is in control of what the status of a given vulnerability is, while enabling development teams to have that information right at where they need it, so they can help address those vulnerabilities in real time. And another huge addition is adding lead time for changes to our DORA 4 API. For those who don't know, DORA is the DevOps research institute that has data going back for years on how the most performant DevOps teams get the job done. And they've distilled these 4 critical metrics that can help you align your DevOps teams to, the thing that you want done, which is shipping better products faster. And those 4 metrics are deploy frequency, lead time for changes, change failure rate, and the time to restore the service if there is an incident. And so with GitLab 13.10, we're adding lead time to changes to the API so that you can see exactly how long it's taking for each project or group for that lead time from an idea to being able to ship into production as a change. How long is that cycle taking? And be able to measure that and measure it over time. There's a lot of other great features in 13.10, and I'd encourage you to Google GitLab 13.10 to find the blog post to look at all of them. But there's a few other honorable mentions here that I really want to talk about. One is viewing Jira issues directly in GitLab. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. Before I came to GitLab, I worked in a traditional IT space, government contractor where Jira was how we ran everything. It's how the government ran everything. And so now you have the ability to integrate Jira directly so that you can see those Jira issues and all the detail behind them right in GitLab. That allows your developers to keep working where they want to work, and your product teams or your customer can be in Jira and updating issues there, and everyone's in sync. We also have the ability to automatically retarget merge requests if you change the default branch. So as you may know, the Git project upstream of us and GitLab in 14.0 will be changing the default branch for new projects to be main rather than master. And so there's a lot of folks that are trying to change their projects. Of course, 14.0 won't force you to change anything that you have today, right? You can keep it running the same way forever. But if you're interested in changing the name of the default branch of your project, is relatively simple. There's a blog that I put out about how you can change that in GitLab and a bunch of other places. There's a great blog by Scott Hanselman on how to do it in GitHub. I've written about how to do it with Netlify. There's lots of places you might need to change it. But one of the biggest drawbacks may be if you have a lot of in-flight merge requests at the time, those merge requests are going to be targeting master. And if you change the default branch to main, you want them now to target main. And so with GitLab 13.10, we're allowing you to kind of do that automatically, which will be really nice. It's also huge improvements to the integration with my IDE of choice VS Code. So there's kind of two places where that integration happens. Of course, there's integration from GitLab into VS Code. And then there's the GitLab workflow extension for VS Code that allows you to see and interact with GitLab data within VS Code. So on that workflow extension, you can now clone directly from GitLab with VS Code. So the git clone function of VS Code now works directly with GitLab. And kind of the inverse of that is in GitLab, when you drop down the clone drop-down menu, there's now an open in VS Code button that'll open and clone it directly into VS Code using the same functionality. So that's really great. I'm always glad to see my IDE of choice get better integrated with GitLab. Two other changes that I want to talk about. One is an MVC, right? So if you've been with GitLab before, or you've seen the show before, you've heard me talk about minimal viable change, right? We, instead of minimal viable product or minimal viable feature, we talk about minimal viable change. What's the thing that can incrementally make people's lives better? Let's ship that and then iterate towards, a lovable feature. And so the MVC in this release that I'm excited about is epic boards. So some of you may be using epics within GitLab to track, groups of issues and common themes. Well, something that I've wanted for a while, and I'm sure many of you have, is the ability to see those epics on a board, much like we have issue boards. And so an MVC for that is shipped in 13.10. And I'd love everyone to try that out and give their feedback. Right now is a great time to do that because we just shipped an MVC and now we're going to be trying to iterate on it and make it better. So let us know what you think. And lastly, another thing near and dear to my heart, because I love Raspberry Pi and kind of small hardware, edge hardware things, is we have a reference architecture for running GitLab in a memory-constrained 2 gigabit or less of memory environment, right? And so GitLab, super powerful program. It's used by us to run GitLab.com for millions and millions of users. It's used by our customers to run instances that are tens and 70,000 users or more. And so obviously those are very large scaled architectures with multiple, machines involved and, different use of object storage and all kinds of things. But if you just want to get started with running GitLab, you don't want to build all that, right? You just want to run it on as small a machine as possible. And you just want to kind of have the basics working. And so this reference architecture that shows you how to kind of turn off some of those, high performance HA things that you don't need, and really limit the memory consumption of GitLab to fit in a small footprint is now kind of officially released with GitLab 13.10. So take a look at that. So next, I want to talk about a little bit about Kubernetes. And, I'm not the first one or won't be the last one to talk about it. You've probably heard a lot about it, but maybe you haven't. Maybe you're, a front-end developer like me and you're, Kubernetes is something you hear but don't really follow. So I want to talk a little bit about that, though, because Kubernetes is, a big deal in our industry. And what it is basically it's an open source container orchestration platform. Well, what does that mean? Well, we're all building our code into containers these days, but how we orchestrate, how we lay out and, put into production each of those containers can be a challenge, right? So Kubernetes is designed to kind of automate that management of all your application containers and, how they're deployed, how they scale up or scale down, how they operate. It allows you to kind of partition as you go, right? So you can scale up and down as necessary, right? This is where it comes from. It came as a project out of Google, who famously has the Borg system in Google that does this, allows them to scale very quickly up and down different applications. And it allows you to respond quickly and efficiently to, customer demand, while not just deploying to a whole bunch of hardware. So you can limit the hardware usage in your production environment, but also minimize feature disruption if you roll something out and it becomes very popular. And there's a lot of other things it does. That's vastly oversimplifying what Kubernetes can do. But it's, it's something that I think is important to at least have kind of the background on. And then, GitLab's been all in on Kubernetes for some time. You can deploy GitLab itself on Kubernetes, right? And so we're slowly working through taking the GitLab.com, deployment of Kubernetes, as I mentioned before. Deployment of GitLab. As I mentioned before, it's a large deployment. It has lots of different machines up and running, and moving as much of that workload as we can to Kubernetes so that it can respond better to changes in traffic to GitLab.com. But many folks are also choosing in their environments to deploy GitLab onto Kubernetes, right? And so that's really helpful. But the other thing is, even if you don't have GitLab deployed onto Kubernetes, you can use GitLab to deploy your software directly to Kubernetes. And there's kind of three distinct ways that GitLab works with or within Kubernetes, right? And you can use these independently or together, right? So again, you can deploy your software through GitLab CI/CD or through GitLab Auto DevOps directly into your Kubernetes cluster where it's going to live. You can also use Kubernetes to manage runners that are attached to your GitLab instance. So again, to scale up and down the CI/CD capacity of your instance. And then again, like we said at first, you could run the GitLab application and various services on Kubernetes cluster. And so I take the time to point that out because sometimes it's confusing when you talk about GitLab and Kubernetes. You could be talking about any one of those three distinct ways that GitLab interacts with Kubernetes. And so it's good to distinguish. And finally today, if you're interested in learning more about Kubernetes or cloud native as an entire space, right? So this cloud native space has born out of the fact that we're now delivering applications in a very different way as we deliver them, first to the cloud, right? Kind of as first-class citizens in the cloud. The premier event for Cloud Native is called KubeCon. It's called KubeCon and Cloud Native Con. And it's coming, the Europe edition is coming in 2020 in May. But it's the Europe edition, but it's virtual, right? Of course, given our current state of the world. And so you can join KubeCon, and there's always fantastic talks from beginner talks to in-depth discussion of the various projects and different things going on within the cloud native world, whether it's storage or networking or Kubernetes itself. And this KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, really brings together everyone, right? All the adopters, the developers, the practitioners, and it lets us all come together and collaborate face to face. Normally together in person, but for now virtually. You also get to engage directly with the leaders of Kubernetes and projects like Prometheus and other CNCF hosted projects, and help set that direction for Cloud Native as a whole. And I think that's an important event to attend if you can. And if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. I'm actually also on the CNCF board, so I may be biased when I say it's a great event, but I think if you ask anyone in the industry that's been, they'll say, yeah, it's one of the best events of the year. And this year, GitLab is doing a GitLab commit before KubeCon, and we're going to talk about, how we see this world, right? We talked a little bit about how GitLab interacts with Kubernetes. And I talked about how it can push code from GitLab CI/CD into Kubernetes. But we've also built something called the GitLab Kubernetes agent that kind of flips that mentality on its head by saying, let's have something sit in Kubernetes and pull code changes and infrastructure changes into our Kubernetes environment. Because many people like, GitLab for that like simple and powerful Kubernetes integration that pushes, but we weren't satisfied with that. So we wanted to improve it, right? And so we're currently building its release, but we're still building the GitLab Kubernetes agent. And we're kind of want to show you through that initial approach and why people might choose pull versus push when it comes to Kubernetes. And so look forward to that right the day zero event before KubeCon. So thanks again for joining me today. You can find me on the internet at O'Leary Crew, most places. But Twitter is probably where I spend most of my time. My DMs are wide open. So if you have an idea for a future episode or anything from today's episode you want to discuss in more detail or questions about attending KubeCon, especially if you can't get your company to sponsor it, please shoot me a DM on Twitter and we'll see what I can do to help. Or anything else from today's episode in more detail. The best way to get me is Twitter, and that's at O'Leary Crew. And then one other small plug before I go. Lego is putting out, or the Lego Ideas group puts out ideas for Lego sets that don't exist yet. It's a complete change of pace. Just walk with me. And one of the new ideas that are out right now is a Lego Women of Computing set. And some may be familiar with the Women of NASA set, which is really cool, which kind of has a crossover to Women of Computing because Margaret Hamilton was featured. And let me just show you that real quick, because of course I own it. Oh, there she is. So Margaret Hamilton, of course, was the person who coined the term software engineer, famously pictured like in this Lego, standing next to the printout of code from the Apollo 11, or the Apollo missions, rather, not Apollo 11, but all the Apollo missions that was actually taller than her. And she was the director that ran software engineering for the Apollo program for many years. So this Lego Women of Computing will bring other women like Grace Hopper and Ada Lovelace and these fantastic women that have contributed to and really are the mothers of our industry as a whole. And right now it's just an idea. So they need support. They need to know that you would, support them building this. I obviously would. I'd be buying it to hang on my shelf. You can see the other women of NASA on my shelf here. This is the space shuttle. And there's another one somewhere. Anyway, if you would like to see that Lego set exist, go to labwork.dev/go/Lego. That'll redirect you to the Lego Ideas page where you can say, all you have to do is click and say, yes, I would support this. And that'll help get that Lego set built and produced. So completely unrelated to anything GitLab, but I think it would be really cool to have a Lego set, especially with Grace Hopper. There's an actual bug piece in there for those of you that know the story of Grace and finding a real bug inside of a computer. Anyway, really excited about that. Hope you support it as well. Again, this lab is produced monthly. So come back and see us next month for the next episode. But for today, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month in the lab. Stay safe.
All right, next up, we've got a panel discussion between Alan and Louise Cermak from Catapult CX, Garima Bapai with DevOps Community of Practice, DevOps Canada, and Brendan O'Reilly at Dacia DevOps. They talk about the assessment of DevOps capabilities from the DevOps Institute. It's a great conversation. Let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on another segment here for TechStrong TV. This is a special segment panel for TechStrong that I'm going to be conducting here. I'm happy to have you join us. I'm also really happy to have three interesting people join us. Let me introduce you to them. and if I mispronounce people's names, I apologize. We do the best we can here on TechStrong TV, right? But we're going to start with Garima. Is it Bapal? Fair? Good? Okay. Garima, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Ellen. And I'm Garima Bajpai from Ottawa, Canada. I'm the founder for the DevOps community of practice here in Canada, which has 3 chapters, Toronto, Edmonton, and Ottawa. I'm also the organizer for the DevOps Summit, which happens in Canada, November 8th and 9th. And I am ambassador with DevOps Institute, as well as ambassador with the CD Foundation. So today we are going to have a very interesting dialogue on DevOps assessments. So I can't wait to get started, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing for the DevOps community. Next up, let me introduce you to Brendan O'Reilly. Brendan, welcome. A little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my company is called Data DevOps. We've been working with the DevOps Institute now for about 5 or 6 years, predominantly delivering their training. And I myself am a consultant, and like the other speakers here today, really looking forward and excited about what's happening with ADOC, because I see a big opportunity for our customers to get deeper into their DevOps journeys, to progress those journeys.
Fantastic, and thank you. And then last but certainly not least is we have Louise Cermak, excuse me. Louise, did I get that right?
Almost, yeah.
Well, say it right, because you're entitled to have your name said right. It's my fault. So please, how do we pronounce your name?
Thanks, Alan. It's Cermak.
Cermak, okay.
Yes,
got it.
Cermak. I'm a principal consultant with Catapult CX. We build software ourselves, and we also consult in Agile and DevOps, and have been doing so for sort of 10, 15 years. And we're excited for ADOC, because actually having the combination of being engineers as well, we can really understand the capability and how to apply it.
Absolutely. Well, all three of you, thanks for joining us. So a couple of you have mentioned ADOC, right? And this is something that our friends at the DevOps Institute announced, I guess it was last week or the week before now. And ADOC, for our audience who may not be familiar, stands for Assessment of DevOps Capabilities. And this is a new assessment model that the folks at DevOps Institute have been working on. Look, I know they've been working on it for over a year already. It's been primarily driven by Helen Beal, who is Helen's a very well-known DevOps person in the community, but she's also the founder of the DevOps Institute Ambassadors, and has been a DevOps consultant herself for many, many years, as long as I'm doing DevOps.com. And then Helen was really helped with this by Evelyn Orlick, who's a DevOps research director at DevOps Institute, former Forrester VP. And then I also know that she's been helped a lot with people like the three of you, who are real-world DevOps consultants who are helping organizations every single day with their DevOps transformations and capabilities. So before we jump into ADOC, though, let's take it up a notch and talk about DevOps assessments in general. Right? Why are they important? Why are they important? And if anyone wants to give us sort of a brief history of evolution or time around these assessments and how they're used, let's say, by consultants and or end user organizations. Garima, I know you have a lot of experience, so if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to kick it off and then have the rest of the panel chime in.
Right, and I actually term DevOps transformations as a journey towards remaking culture. So it has been largely a complex journey because of two factors, actually. The first factor is that the complexities brings along with, a lot of focus on, how you can upskill people, how can you actually transform your knowledge base and skill set to a journey which is basically based on experimentation, unlearning, and learning from failures, right? And the second aspect is that there's no such literature available. There's a lot of talk about DevOps transformation, but the literature is in making. So there's limited academic support as well as support from best practices perspective, how to do this transformation, right? So these assessments come it is very crucial because it will help you assess where you are, and every organization will have unique challenges, right? So it is important that to assess where you are in your journey, what you can do. It's not like a traditional transformation journey of 3 to 5 years where you were relying on a lot of target state to be models which were already defined. It's continuously evolving, right? So you'll have to have a view on what you can do today and how you can incrementally in short cycles transform. So what happens in this process is that assessment becomes more crucial and essential because there are discrete efforts. There are, efforts in short cycles, and this assessment and measurement will help you course correct, will help you understand where you are heading to in your journey and what is needed as next steps to ensure that you incrementally build value, right? So that's why I think these assessments are extremely important, and we will talk along this conversation how ADOC can actually help you in this journey, as well as what are the major impediments and challenges organizations have, and what should they look out for.
Fair.
So I think that over the last few years where we've been helping organisations, what we've noticed is that many of them are trying to do their own assessments. And I've been into so many organisations where people have got Excel spreadsheets and they're trying to measure how they're performing because, Garima's right, there's a lot of learning and experimentation, a lot of it's self-learning, which is what we encourage, right, from a DevOps culture perspective. But people want to know that they're going in the right direction. So they start with their own spreadsheets, fill them in, try and measure their capabilities. And the tool that like ADOC helps organisations have a much more structured way of doing that. And obviously it's more scalable than an Excel spreadsheet. But people want to know that they're doing the right things.
Just a little bit about the history, perhaps, Alan. ADOC is brand new, but there was a progenitor in the form of DORA, if you recall.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah, so that was with Jez Humble and Nicole Forsgren. So when they produced their State of DevOps report, it was a means by which organizations could form views about what good looked like. So you had your elite and then, so on. And that, it definitely raised people's curiosity about can we do this? Can we measure? And of course, one of the principles with any DevOps transformation is to be data-driven. And so the 180 odd questions that are included in the enterprise edition are very much about trying to capture and turn subjective opinion into something quantitative, a good first guess. And I think DORA has been successful. It's now part of the Google organization, I believe. But this is a nice independent offer from the DevOps Institute, and really looking forward here at Dacia to taking that to our clients. I see some really interesting use cases. Some of the people that I'm talking to right now are just starting in a CTO role, and they want to baseline what they're doing, so they can look. 6 months from now, they can say, well, how much have we done? They want to get an understanding of what have they got in house right now. And then look at it again to see if they've been effective in those changes that Garima, and a really well made point by Garima. Nice, short, sharp, plan, do, check, act type changes that are going to take place over the next 6 months.
Right.
I mean,
I
for
also,
me, go.
I also want to focus on two specific aspects of ADOC which stands out. So a lot of people have actually understood that, you cannot remake culture without people centricity, right? So that's given. And we also understand that emerging technology can be a tool in your toolbox when you're trying to kind of transition from X state to Y state. And a lot of focus has been placed on processes and frameworks. What ADOC has been standing out for me is they have actually reflected two other different things which are equally essential. The first thing is functional silos. And if you look at like large enterprises, what they struggle with, what has been in the past is that we have large functional organizations and units with their own business goals and objectives. And when these people are trying to their economy, towards cloud centricity, towards DevOps capabilities, that's a large challenge because, it's not easy to actually break down that functional silos, burn all the ships, and so that there is no, way back. And it has to be carefully done so that, we have a possibility of course correction. That's the first important point. The second important point which stands out for me is automation. And when I look at automation, I see that the data-driven approach towards DevOps and how that will ensure that we automate good processes, we automate the capabilities which are creating value not only end to end but also within the practices, right? So that's those two things I think put together with people, technology, and process would actually make a kind of a full house for doing this assessment in one way rather than looking at it in pockets.
Great. In my mind, Brendan, you mentioned the DORA folks, and of course Nicole has moved on from Google. She's over at GitHub, and I don't know if Jez is even with Google anymore, frankly. But really with DORA, it wasn't necessarily a consultant's tool, though consultants used it. I think one of the interesting things with ADOC and what I know about, how it came about is it really was designed for consultants to use as part of their consulting practice to help you, collectively help your clients get a baseline, a roadmap to show where you're strong, where you're weak, and going forward, so that consultant can be more helpful, more impactful, and frankly more efficient, which translates to less dollars, right, that the clients waste in kind of circling around to figure out where the ground zero is. And so I would just point out that, now that's one use of ADOC is as a consultant's tool. There's also the community version for individual organizations, and large enterprises can do it on their own. They don't necessarily need a consultant, but it really was designed with that in mind. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, DevOps especially. It was one of the knocks on DevOps, right? And I'm DevOps.com. I've heard this from day one. It's squishy. There's no manifesto like in Agile. There's no real definition. It's how do you put your finger on it? It seems like a unicorn, a mythical beast or something. Well, with ADOC, lesson I learned early in my career in technology was everything can be measured and we measure everything, right? And ADOC kind of gives us a little bit of that certainty, at least, as opposed to where you are, where you're on DevOps. Wondering, have you guys actually had a chance yet to, try ADOC out with real world clients and what some of the results or findings were?
Yeah, we're doing that right now with a client. And we found that it was much easier to prioritize the activities that they needed to do. So we could align the activities with their roadmap and make sure that they were incrementing in the right direction to address some of the challenges that they had with their own customers. So we took a very customer-based approach to prioritization of the activities, and they could really see a difference in the way they were able to engage the customer, deliver the features much faster, get the features agreed properly, and you know, through improving their continuous delivery pipeline, for example, and their, you know, the lead time to change would improve, and stability and reliability. So we were able to prioritize exactly the things that were important right then to them with their customer base.
That's great. Anybody else?
Yeah, well, just to echo, I personally haven't had experience with the product just yet, but I have had that experience of walking the corridors with a spreadsheet, meeting people, capturing data. Yeah, and that's a really slow, inefficient way to capture a picture that evolves very, very quickly. So I'm excited to do it this way, which is just way more efficient and lower cost to the client. And I think in terms of the consulting add-on, it's that experience of having been through several transformations that allows us to analyze the results once they're produced. And then exactly like Louise has pointed out, prioritize, right? So what changes can we make that will fit in with the natural rhythm of this company if they've got, you know, if they're not yet delivering on a regular basis. So that kind of stuff, I think, is where the consulting value add is.
I think the other thing that's quite nice is you can get the marginal gains as well, because you don't have to tackle everything at once. You can, you know, you can improve one metric and then go and do the next one and the next one and continually improve, which I think the teams that we're working with have really appreciated that, because they can see an uptick quite quickly. They get motivated, they want to change more, they want to get better, and they keep going and getting those marginal gains.
Right, and this is actually extremely good point, because it gives us a perspective, and this is something which I actually have experienced myself. I went to experience ADOC myself, and you know, I wanted to bring my team in as well. But what has happened in this journey, I have realized that organizations have overestimated the potential of short-term gains. And when I say that, often people do not realize that whatever, you know, transition or transformation from a DevOps perspective they are doing, they're looking at short-term gains and probably losing out on the long-term potential of, you know, creating larger value, long-term value, right? So this is also a reflection that when you take this kind of an assessment, you would potentially have two aspects: what you can do in short term and what will you achieve through several initiatives put together incrementally, and how that outcome would look like in long term, right? So that is where these assessments would come very crucial for organizations, and especially big organizations.
Agreed. You know, with all three of you being involved in consulting, I'm going to ask you to, you know, take off your consultant hats for a second. And for end user organizations out here watching this, is ADOC of use to them without a consultant?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. You know, as we do build software and we use those metrics ourselves, and we're constantly monitoring those dials, and okay, we do some consulting around this stuff as well, but actually we've got customers that we need to deliver to. And for us, being on top of all of that all the time is really helpful. So anyone taking those, taking the assessment would be able to identify changes that they could make in their own engineering. That's straightforward. It's really set out very easily to understand.
Very good.
Alan,
so good, Brendan.
Yeah, so there's a friend of mine is a lawyer, and pretty much anytime I ask him a question, the answer is it depends. So in answer to your question about whether end-using organizations can benefit from this without a consultant. I would say it depends. It depends on the mindset in the organization, the appetite for learning, the appetite for change, and so forth. But for sure, even just to kind of get started and to understand where they're at, there's huge value here without a consultant, just to get a picture of where you're at.
Agreed. And I think that's part of this too. And I think that's also why there's I forget if they call it the Enterprise Edition, which is the full, like, I forget how many questions there are already, hundreds of questions, versus the Community Edition, which I think is just like 30 questions or something like that. But even the Community Edition, I think brings value to an end user organization who may just want to, let me stick a flag in the ground as a marker and see where we go from there. Guys, we're about out of time, but I want to thank you, all three of you, for joining us. I should mention that if you're interested in ADOC, right, Assessment of DevOps Capabilities, you can find out a lot more about it at the DevOps Institute site, which is devopsinstitute.com. And I know there's licenses for consultants, end user organizations. We've also launched the membership associations. So as a member of the association, I think you get some use of it as well. But for now, Louise, Brendan, Garima, thank you so much for joining us on TechStrong TV. Good luck, and keep us posted with ADOC.
Thanks, Alan. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with our next guest.
All right, next up, we've got Philippe Humeau and Alan. Philippe is the CEO of CrowdSec. He's got a new crowdsourced security platform. It's great technology. I'm very well familiar with CrowdSec and their technology, and it's totally worth checking out. So let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel, and you're watching another segment on TechStrong TV. My guest for this segment is Philippe Humeau. Philippe is the CEO of CrowdSec. And Philippe, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hello, I'm delighted to be with you.
Delighted to have you here, Philippe. So, this is the first time I believe that we're interviewing anyone from CrowdSec on TechStrong. So I think a good place to start is to introduce the company to our audience. So, Philippe, if you don't mind, give us a little background, maybe a little of your own background as well.
Sure. I decided to start this company 5 years ago, but it took time because I had lockups. I sold my previous company, so I had to stay for a while and so on and so forth. And couldn't recruit my old pals. But basically, I've been in a pen test background first. I did a lot of pen tests, red team. So a lot of offensive security. And then I did a lot of defensive security on the other side. And trust me, it's way harder. So what we did is like high security environments, but like 10 years ago. So it was kind of a new thing by then. And we sold the company because, a lot of French managed services wanted to have this kind of high security cloud for their customers. So, and then I found, we made just half the way. We could provide the same level of security, but without the hassles, right? Without all the complexity that we had to have in this company. And we could do it through a product. And that's how CrowdSec is born.
Excellent. And you're right. So my background security too, I spent 20 plus years. And one of the companies I co-founded, about 60% of our business was the U.S. DOD. We did Navy, Marines, Army, installations, and again, high security, a lot of certifications and information assurance kind of work that had to go on. And I think back to what we were thinking and doing 10, 15 years ago versus what's available today. And of course, it's very, very different environments, right? 15 years ago, the DoD wasn't really using cloud. The Army or the Navy and so forth. And we didn't have a lot the AppSec world wasn't what it is. But when I hear the term CrowdSec, I'm thinking like crowdsourcing, or that there's an element of that in it. Is that part of the CrowdSec formula? Is crowdsourcing security?
Absolutely. It's actually the core of it. That's why we chose the name, and I'm so delighted people nail it and understand the sound in it. So the basic thinking we have behind is like, look, we've been spending zillions of dollars in security, right? So if you take like super big banks that are spending hundreds of $100s of million a year, they still get hacked. How come? I mean, that's crazy. This is one of the only field in the whole industry where no matter the amount of money you put, you can get beaten up. It's like if you would go to a racetrack with your brand new Lambo and you would get beaten up at the finish line by a Chevy pickup 67. It's just not possible, right? But this is the world of car. In the world of IT, the big budget doesn't make such a big difference because the game is totally asymmetrical. It's totally in favor of the offensive forces. And those guys are teaming together. They are sharing the information. They are structured. They are exchanging things together. And we said, okay, let's do the same thing. Let's gather all the DevOps, all the SecOps, all the sysadmins, and give them a tool that would be some sort of a Waze, but for firewalls. And as soon as they get aggressed, they would share the IP. So not only block the aggression, but share the IP that aggressed them with all the network. So we would all work together as a crowd against these offensive forces.
Love it. I love it. And, so Philippe, let me ask what some may consider a silly question. Why did it take for us to sort of apply sort of a crowdsourced, model to security like this?
Well, what we have now about like the threats is classical CTI, right? The classical CTI goes like this. People spawn 100, 200, 300 machines on a couple of clouds running simulated services, which we call honeypot, right? So they are like, attack me, and they simulate that there are VPN endpoint, like terminal service endpoint, Samba endpoint, HTTP services and stuff, right? And they listen to what's incoming, and they say, okay, this IP is nefarious, this IP is dangerous, and so on. But this is limited compared to what we're doing. What we're doing is like running real services, because this software is protecting real services, real VPN endpoint, real HTTP services, and so on, across all the internet, IPv4, IPv6, no matter the IP range. There are people using the product in Togo, in university, sweatshops in Thailand, individuals in Iceland with fiber connection, 5G, 4G, whatever, you name it. It's impossible to pinpoint us on the map, right? And those are real services, I told you. They are scattered all across the place, and they are not gathered just one range or whatever. So it's infinitely more powerful to have a crowdsourced information than a centrally gathered one. I mean, centrally by like 100, 200 machines. We already are thousands of users, and we are targeting millions. We want to be the next gen fail to ban distributed across the whole network. So we really literally are aiming at million machines. But already if we are 10,000, 20,000, we have the best ever source of information available.
I love it, 100%. Now, Philippe, as we were talking off camera before we started, our audience is some DevOps, some cyber, then some DevSecOps, both, cloud native, people interested in digital transformation. If you can, I'm going to ask you to talk to our developer audience right now, our DevOps audience. How does this help them? How can they leverage this? How could they be involved?
Sure. Well, the first step is using the software. So the software goes as follows. You go on GitHub, it's for free, forever. It's a MIT license. You really don't owe us anything, right? This software will help you protect your stack, whatever it is. It could be like HTTP, could be whatever level and protocol you want. As long as your software are spitting logs, we can analyze those logs and apply the behavior engine on it. And the behavior engine will find patterns, like if someone is failing 5 times its authentication on an FTP, maybe it's trying to guess my password. If someone is doing $0.1 transaction on our website, where usually our web shop is selling like on average $30 cards, is someone trying to credit card stuff and validate credit card numbers. If someone is scanning a lot of close ports, if someone is scanning a lot of URLs and stuff, all of these are behavior we can catch, and we already do, right? And then they can apply a remedy wherever they want. So they can detect at one point and remedy in another point, in another place, on the firewall, in their reverse proxy, directly in the apps, in their payment gateway, wherever they want. So once they did this, they can partake into the network naturally by sharing the IP they blocked. They don't have to. If they don't want to, they don't have to. They can deactivate this feature. But if they want to partake into the network, then they get a second benefit from the network, the global IP reputation database working for them for free. They are sharing with us. They are making us strong. So we are giving them back all this power. And the monetization model is elsewhere. It's where the people don't want to share anything, right? And they are maybe willing to have extra features like handling a lot of machines. Like today, somebody deployed maybe 200 or 300 machines. They don't want to use it one by one. They want to have a global control tower of all of this to be able to turn on switch, adjust the policies and stuff, right? So this is the way they can already work with us. They have to know that we don't share the logs. We don't capture the logs. Their logs are treated locally. The only thing we export, if they do want to, is behavior, IP, and timestamp. That's all. This is the only thing we export. And then we can do the reputation magic, right? And if they want to go deeper into this and help the global community, they can bring their knowledge at the table, because they are all developers. They are very qualified people. So since it's open source, we are accepting a lot of contribution. It could be new scenarios, to detect some new behavior. Could be new parsers to swallow some new logs that we don't know about yet. Could be a new type of bouncer that, I don't know, will like ring the CEO or the CTO of the company on his phone instead of blocking the IP, whatever they want to do. And all of this will be integrated in the hub and distributed back to the community so they can partake into the development of the software.
Excellent. Sitting here listening to you, Philippe, I'm thinking to myself, this was really kind of the original premise behind threat research, right? Is you did set up global honeypots and you did gather data from your honeypots, but what made threat research at some of the bigger security vendors work was that they were able to anonymously, right, by anonymizing the data, they were able to use their hundreds or thousands of customers' data, to supplement the information they had in the honeypot to give a better view of what were dangerous IPs, a better view of what packets, what apps, what exe files were malicious, right? What email addresses and so forth. Now the problem is that threat research was this company's threat research and that company's threat research, and we didn't see a lot of the pooling across security vendors. So, if you were a Fortune 100 or a Fortune 500 company, you oftentimes had to subscribe to multiple threat research feeds, threat intel feeds, to get a complete picture. And it sounds almost like CrowdSec is overcoming that by being open like this. But more importantly as well is there's a proactive element to it that, what you get back for putting your anonymous information into the machine is you proactively put in defense. And then it's up to individual companies how proactive they want to be, right? Do I want to block all the IPs you're telling me are bad? Or do I want to just, note them as bad and we'll keep our eye on them kind of thing? So it seems like a very, fair trade, right? Of what you get for what you give.
Absolutely. We have to be fair with the community because, when a company like us doing open source, we will announce shortly, and that's kind of a scoop thing, that we are doing a big fundraiser, right? So when an open source company is doing a fundraiser, the first thing people are thinking, okay, they sold their soul to the devil, and they're going to monetize everything. That's not true. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is gather a lot of information, make the community benefit from it for free. But if you're a big bank and you cannot share a single thing or just don't want to, then you can leverage the database anyway. It's not a problem. It's fine by us. And what you said before about those CTI company or maybe other antivirus, whatever, they didn't really naturally share together. They were more competitors, right? And also they were treating a very specific thing. Like, for example, I don't know, HTTP layer. Akamai is something internally, but it's internal knowledge. And it's only on HTTP. Maybe F-Secure has something, maybe McAfee has something, and so on. And they are all within their room. So they share a bit, but it's harder for them because they are competitor in the end, right? But we think at CrowdSec, the only safe way is that DevOps, SecOps, sysadmins join hands together and say, okay, let's do it all together. Because all together, we will outnumber the hackers. We'll outpower them by a 1 to 1,000 ratio. You use a new IP, we know about it. You have 3,000 IPs, we know them all. And we'll be peeling the onion. And trust me, we won't be the one crying.
Excellent. I don't disagree with you. But let's also be real. This is a venture. How can you monetize this, or how are you planning on monetizing? Right? Because there's ways of monetizing without being a vulture, or anything like that. So how and if it's too early, it's fine. Just say it's too early.
Well, no, it's super fine by me, and we're transparent about that. We are real open source companies. Everything you ask, we have to answer because it's a model, right? So the thing is, the monetization goes as follows. Say we have many large customers looking at us, really, really large tier 1 US-based cloud maker, right? Stuff like that. People like that. What they need is like a global, centralized way of handling the security policies across thousands, if not tens of thousands of machines. They need to be able to enforce specific stuff at specific time on their bouncers, and that is a premium feature, one of them. The second feature that you get for premium is AI, because in not so long from now, we'll be able to dig into our huge data lake that is growing by the day and see what we call weak signals. Weak signals is like IP A, B, C, and D are aggressive, but they are just slightly under the level of noise where we would deem them as being really, really bad. So they are acting all together, and each of them is doing part of the job, right? So since it's separated in small packages, it would be not offending enough to end up into the reputation database. But the AI will catch this pattern, saying, oh, A, B, C, and D were at this place before, and in this place as well, more or less at the same time, with the same time frame or ratio. Probably A, B, C, and D work together. So you know what, JP Morgan, Citibank, whomever, if you see A coming to your premises, directly block B, C, and D before they even come to you, right? Because they will come to you. We know about it. It's more about this minority report thing, The other feature we'll monetize is like telling you that you are attacking, right? We see your IPs attacking people around. So we'll tell you, you are probably compromised. You should look deeper into your system. We can tell you also if you are the only one being targeted by an attack and not anyone else, which would end up being a targeted attack, which is also a premium feature. And you get cool dashboard for your boss, to present like, look what we folded as attacks this month. Maybe you can give us $50 a month to get better dashboard, better reporting and stuff, and support obviously. So that's pretty much what's inside.
Got it. I love it. Philippe, we didn't tell people where to go on the web to find out and partake and join this. What's the URL?
Well, crowdsec.net, crowdsec.net. And obviously on GitHub, we are crowdsecurity/crowdsec. You can just Google in CrowdSec. You will find us pretty much everywhere if the PR agency did the good job, right?
What's what you're paying for, right? Hey, they got you on the show here. Anyway, Philippe, we're about out of time. I want to thank you for joining us. I wish you the best of luck with CrowdSec. This is, as a security person, I like what I'm hearing. I like what I'm hearing. It's a good thing. Come back and visit us again. Keep us posted, okay?
Yes, it will be my pleasure.
Excellent. Philippe Humont, CEO, CrowdSec. That's crowdsec.net. Check it out. Sounds really great stuff here. This is Alan. We're going to take a quick break on TechStrong TV, and we're going to be right back with our next guest.
CISO Talk. Hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I am here now with the headlines for you. First up on DevOps.com is an article that looks at how to find DevSecOps engineers. They are out there, but they are somewhat scarce, and the pandemic hasn't helped much to move the talent pool forward very much. But organizations are hiring, and they are looking for engineers that have both the dev and the sec experience. Finding the dev isn't the difficult part. Finding the sec is a bit more difficult, but certainly doable. It's the combination that's tough to find. This article looks at whether organizations might want to turn inward when looking for DevSecOps engineers and upskill some of their current employees to fill those positions. It's better to teach developers about security than it is to bring security specialists, who are also in short supply, up to speed about development. The result is often less rework, reduced risk, and shorter development timelines. Other approaches include adopting a build secure mindset to reduce the security effort needed after systems have been created. That approach can be applied to any level position, from entry level to sales engineer to CTO. The bottom line, DevSecOps talent is out there, either internally or externally, but organizations may just need to tease it out. And speaking of upskilling, we take a look at a recent report from low-code vendor Mendix that suggests workers, for the most part, embrace digitization and automation and would do more to meet the technical skills demands needed for their jobs if their employers supported them. And that's where low-code comes in. According to the survey, nearly 9 out of 10 respondents said they want to learn low-code software development, while only 3% currently use low-code in their jobs. More than 2/3 say they want to create a software app that would solve work issues. The survey focused on the manufacturing sector, but it highlights some interesting trends regarding digital transformation and employee attitudes toward it, as well as the way organizations aren't doing enough to help their employees adopt new skills to thrive in this new environment. The survey found that U.S. manufacturers are giving their workers little help in developing their digital skills, and only 18% of workers are happy with their digital skills. At the same time, 87% of U.S. workers said they want to learn low-code development. Clearly, there is a disconnect in the market, and it's worth a reminder that organizations that embrace digital transformation from all angles, technology, process, and people, have a greater chance of being more successful. In news, 42Crunch has announced that the scanning tools it provides to enable DevOps teams to secure APIs now can be deployed in on-premises IT environments. The 42Crunch API security platform has also been updated to provide expanded support for the Open API specification for REST interfaces defined by the OASIS standard body. In addition, it now allows IT teams to share collections of APIs among specific teams and users with different levels of access and provides integration with third-party identity management platforms. Cybercriminals are increasingly targeting insecure APIs because they potentially provide access to a trove of data, and they can enable compromise of an entire software supply chain. Unfortunately, however, APIs don't always receive the level of attention they deserve, and many developers still tend to view them as an afterthought. Making sure APIs are secure requires dynamic scanning processes to be baked into DevOps workflows if organizations want to ensure the integrity of their software. All right, over on Container Journal, Red Hat has updated its business process management platform to take additional advantage of Cogito, an open source business automation tool that runs natively on Kubernetes. The subscription to Red Hat Process Automation Platform now provides access to Cogito VS Code tooling that developers can employ to construct rules-based processes for Kubernetes environments using a familiar Visual Studio construct. Over time, the entire Red Hat Process Automation Platform will be based on Cogito, as Red Hat looks to make it easier to employ its BPM platform across multiple clouds and on-premises and IT environments. At the same time, Red Hat is tightening integration between Red Hat Process Automation Platform and the Apache Kafka open source messaging software. Red Hat is making a case for building the next generation of BPM tools on a cloud-native platform that enables processes to scale up and down more fluidly as rapidly changing business conditions may warrant. Support for Cogito is one of the many moves the company is making in that direction. Over on Security Boulevard, we take a look at the growing issue of leaky apps. Recent research from White Hat Security shows that more than 40% of apps actively leaked information, increasing the risk that sensitive data would be exposed. Among the top vulnerabilities, an A3-sensitive data exposure in particular can have dire consequences for the supply chain as attacks ripple across connected applications. The challenge of securing apps is particularly tough in manufacturing, where the research showed the highest window of exposure. 70% of the applications had at least one serious vulnerability in the prior year. That's likely because manufacturing's roots are not in interconnectedness, and at the same time, the sector has experienced rapid advances in operational technology. As a result, security teams must support a growing number of legacy systems and software that must be internet-enabled for at least remote monitoring and, in some cases, remote operations. That's a tough order even in the best of times. The problem of leaky apps shows a real need for DevSecOps, which, as I noted earlier, can be difficult positions to fill. Yes, integrating security and development teams has been challenging, but it is critical in ensuring the highest level of application security. And finally, we have an article that focuses on ways organizations can fix their leaky S3 buckets. Amazon Simple Storage Service, or S3, is a popular service that many developers today rely on to build applications quickly. It also has become a popular target for attackers, which has resulted in a large number of data leaks. There are 3 attack vectors with S3: bucket misconfigurations, stolen bucket credentials, and application vulnerabilities. This article takes a look at each of these and offers up some ways that organizations can do to fix the holes in their buckets. There is, unfortunately, no simple way to be completely secure from hacks and data breaches, but organizations can make it difficult, and therefore less profitable, for attackers to hack them. Having a multi-layered defense in-depth strategy for the most sensitive assets, coupled with strong security controls for each layer, is one way of doing that. All right, that's it for the headlines for today. Please check back with me tomorrow when I'll have a fresh batch for you. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Please stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Fleming Shi, who is the CTO of Barracuda Networks. Hey, Fleming, great to see you. Thanks for joining me on TechStrong TV.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Great. So let's talk about some of the research that Barracuda Networks has done recently in regards to vaccine-related phishing attacks. I know since the beginning of the pandemic, there have been a lot of phishing attacks that are directly kind of related to the pandemic in general. But now we're seeing a spate of them that are really kind of more focused on the vaccine and targeting folks who are interested in getting information about the vaccine and such. So tell me a little bit about what you guys have found and really what we need to keep in mind regarding this.
Right. As we were really kind of hoping the vaccines will come coming towards the end of last year, Pfizer, Moderna, all these different companies have actually launched, some messaging about it, testing phases and all that. So we start to see the attackers are utilizing those information or news trends to start mounting attacks, especially spear phishing attacks, right? If you look at overall vaccine-related attacks, in October and November was up by 12%. And basically spear phishing, that's actually going to really become more problematic, especially when it's targeted. And we saw that also increase from then to January when we launched the Threat Spotlight in February. With the study we have seen is up by 25%. So vaccine related. So that's quite of a surprise that, in a way, I'm not too surprised. The bad guys are utilizing this pandemic to every step of the way. They're trying to benefit from, doing these type of attacks to obviously, impersonating brand, strong brands or even just organizations, right? It doesn't even have to be the manufacturer for the vaccine, but it could be a CDC message or something like that. So yeah, we definitely see. It's interesting because we see hope for getting out of the pandemic, but it seems like this cyber attacks are going to just continue, and we don't know what's next after the vaccine. Vaccinations is a global event. It's not just America, right? So if you think about it that way, so we could be, as Biden mentioned yesterday, we could be in good shape by the summer, or at least vaccinated, but the rest of the world may not be at that kind of pace, right? So we will probably see this throughout this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was actually going to ask you, with the phishing attacks you guys have seen, have they been targeted mostly toward the North American region, or are you seeing these attacks happening more on a global basis and maybe, more concentrated in areas where they're not as advanced in their vaccination efforts?
I think if you look at the one examples that we're looking at is obviously US focused. But any examples, I have another example related to, they don't say vaccines, but it's medical equipment, right? So it's in Middle East, and I have those samples as well. But CDC, we obviously are very focused on US and our country here. So I think the attack is not just US, but we are the samples that we shared and the ones that we're seeing are focused here. And they're spear phishing attacks. They're not volumetric phishing or sort of smash and grab kind of situation. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Great. So do you think that even post-pandemic, we're going to see an increase in spear phishing attacks, and we'll just, be kind of like whatever the topic of the day is that's kind of got us all on edge, or whatever the issue is that hackers are just going to take advantage of that?
Absolutely. Actually, it's getting worse, right? I'm obviously aware of the situation that happened related to Microsoft Exchange, right? So the penetration there represents a whole bunch of data that will be left, could be weaponized. And the spear phishing requires a few things, right? You have to do some social engineering to actually make it trustworthy. Then you have targets that you can pick out. Obviously, in the vaccine scenario, you're going to target either logistics or medical, personnel and folks that handles all the logistics and transportation of these vaccines. But if you look beyond that, there will be future attacks, probably not only just on vaccines, but past pandemic, probably, I will say, economic recovery, information about getting back to normal. All these things can be weaponized. And unfortunately, because, it didn't just happen with this Exchange server. It happened way before that. We lost a lot of information back in the days, even with Equifax. I think you remember a lot of breaches. Yeah. So these orchestrated and architected attacks are going to be much more effective for the bad guys. And now with Exchange exposure, that's obviously a problem. And I always been talking about it, right? Exchange it's a software stack that's being, I will call it legacy now. We should be moving on from Exchange server. It's a long running process. It's vulnerable. And there's less resources at a company level that's qualified to run Exchange in a way that is secure and constantly being monitored. So I think the trend is obviously going to Microsoft 365, where there's a lot more eyes, a lot more, security around it, right? So generally, from that perspective, I think the spear phishing attacks are going to get worse. Not good, but hopefully the defenses are, coming out as well. Yeah.
So do you see also that we're going to see these spear phishing attacks kind of evolve and become even more sophisticated than they are now? Or do you think that, right now, what we're seeing is pretty much what we're going to be seeing for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, that's one area I wanted to touch on. We did talk about it in a little bit. We touched on in our blog. The attacks are going to quickly turn from spear phishing to credential thefting, from credential thefting to account takeover, from account takeover to business email compromise, where you're now involved in internal conversations. And a lot of the gateway solutions out there are not going to be able to see that traffic or see that, type of attack. So you really have to rely on API-based solutions that interacts with historical email, even post-delivery should really be something that you can use forensics tools to identify and remediate. So those attacks are pretty bad, because if you have an employee that had a weak password or something, maybe clicked on a link, unfortunately, due to some, one of the spearfish, then from there, it's open season behind the scene, right? They can actually get in there and starting to have conversations with your colleagues. We call it a lateral attacks, scenario, and build up, even more of a sort of a base for the bad guys, in your organization. Yeah.
So what are some things then that organizations should keep in mind? What are some of the best practices that they need to consider to avoid the spear phishing attacks that are coming through now? And just, I'm sure awareness is a huge, huge part of it. But what else can organizations do? What do they need to keep in mind?
Right. Definitely password strength is very important, and also utilize multi-factor authentication everywhere you can for all the SaaS applications you provide to your users or employees who are working either in the office or hybrid from office to home or working completely from home. Because when they take the password credentials, they can't take your phone. Of course, there's SIM hijacking as well. You have to worry about that too, but that's much more sophisticated. But having MFA in place, at least you will, even you lose your password, you're not going to let people take over your account, right? Of course, it doesn't prevent the attackers, if the the link is not really credential thefting, but it can drop ransomware on your system. I'm pretty sure after the Exchange scenario that happened, you will get, phishes that which would have either Trojans that's installed on your system or execute a ransomware attack right away, right? So those scenarios, you obviously have to have a strong data protection. Make sure you have the right things for your data to be, secured, even encrypted if you are capable of doing that. Then beyond that is really training people don't even click on that, right? And just, make sure, get a reading through various different training programs to get a reading who might be subject to these type of attacks or maybe more vulnerable to those attacks, right? So generally, and finally, for sure, still people are going to work from home, at least in a hybrid manner. At least their laptops are not going anywhere. So I would say, start implementing zero trust access to all the SaaS applications and all the internal infrastructure, no matter where your employees at. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Fleming, thank you so much for walking me through it and telling us about the latest spear phishing attacks with the vaccinations. There's a lot of scary stuff out there. And hopefully, I would like to think that once the pandemic starts to wind down, that we'll start to see a relaxation of some of this stuff. But I get the feeling it's not really going to be happening. We'll just kind of move on to the next cyber threat out there. So
that's right.
Unfortunately, we got to remain diligent. So, but thank you again. I do appreciate your time and your explaining the whole layout of the land to me. So thanks again.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me again. Yeah.
All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with John Knisely, who is the principal at Fortress IQ. John, thanks so much for taking a couple minutes and talking with me today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Charlene. Look forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Well, first, let's talk about Fortress IQ. I'm not real familiar with your company, so please tell me about it.
Okay, so Fortress IQ offers a process intelligence platform, and essentially what we have is we're delivering human level observability of all your process data that's really unmatched in the industry. So all your user activity that's been available to you, that will be available to you now, that you previously have not had access to. So you can almost think of it as a system of record that we're building. So every employee, every interaction, every decision you make, we can capture that and then report on it and use it to then drive other, outcomes such as automation or compliance, customer experience, whatever sort of key business initiative you're looking to push forward, we can support that. Fundamentally, it's with this idea of, in order to improve tomorrow, you really need to understand today. And I think that's the key challenge that we see in a lot of digital transformation programs, is that lack of understanding on current state the current state makes it very difficult to get to that desired future state in the future. So we help provide that understanding on the current state activity.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, especially when we are talking about digital transformation efforts. And it's definitely been top of mind for many organizations, since the start of the pandemic, about this time last year. Obviously we saw a ton of companies that really rushed to accelerate their digital transformation efforts. It kind of switched from this, okay, we'll get to it when we get to it, to, oh my God, we've got to get to it. And it's got to be yesterday when it's done. And I think there were so many organizations who did rush their digital transformation efforts for the sake of making sure that their employees were able to work remotely effectively, or that their customers had the best possible user engagement experience. There's so many different reasons why organizations did accelerate their digital transformation efforts. But I think there were instances where the organization said, yeah, we've got to digitally transform, but they didn't really have a purpose, like a set purpose in mind. They just did it because they felt like they had to do it. Maybe there was, as I said, maybe they decided that it would be the best way to engage with more customers, or get their employees, online working remotely. But beyond that, there really didn't see like a long tail, if you will, or a vision attached to it.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think, companies have been going through this digital transformation for a while now. I mean, if you think about it, sort of, the post, .com bust and the financial implosion of 2008, really after that, you had this massive investment, a lot of growth opportunities. And I think a lot of that focus was on sort of the customer experience, front end side of digital transformation. I think what the pandemic really opened up was this vision of, okay, we've sort of ignored the back end side of digital transformation, and let's focus our efforts there. There was too much emphasis, in my opinion, on the sort of customer experience front end side of transformation. And I think, essentially the pandemic has balanced out those two pieces. I've always kind of argued that digital transformation really consists of two pieces. One's the customer experience side, and then two is the operational excellence side. And, to successfully transform, you have to do both of them. And, pre-pandemic, there was too much focus on the front office, and now we've sort of balanced that out a little bit.
Do you think that organizations have actually shifted some of their focus to the back office to your point, to kind of balance it out? Or do you think that we're still kind of at the front side for many organizations, and they haven't really kind of maybe finished what they started with their digital transformation in building that quality customer experience, or in meeting the needs of the pandemic, and are still kind of stuck there doing that, and haven't really thought about the back office yet?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a long-term process that we're going through. Mm-hmm. We've probably got another, who knows, 10, 15 years of this to get through before we can put the check marks on, we've successfully transformed digitally, and we're now operating as a, autonomous enterprise, or whatever we want to qualify as sort of the end of the digital transformation process. But I think, really industry after industry, you saw in the pandemic, companies sort of accelerate and speed up their automation programs in that sort of back office area. You had the, in banking, you had the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP loans that actually were so successful from an automation standpoint. I think the regulators actually stopped them from using technology to automatically process those loans. I think you had, airlines bring in RPA to help deal with the massive influx of cancellations that they had. Insurance companies in a similar vein around, increased claims that they were having to deal and process with. So really, industry after industry, you saw the use of automation and technology to come in, because the business models were shifting so quickly, and they didn't have time to adjust, in essentially almost real time, and couldn't necessarily get the human resources in place to make those adjustments either. So turn to technology as the answer to some of these challenges.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you actually, you bring up an interesting, you mentioned something that kind of caught my eye when you said 10, 15 years down the road, digital transformation will be over. You think it's going to take that long? I kind of feel like, we're almost to the tail end of this phase of digital transformation, and then we'll enter another phase and it'll be something completely different. But, when you say 10, 15 minutes, where are you thinking? What are you thinking? What am
I thinking? I'm thinking, we've been dealing on the front end side of it for at least 10 years now. And we're just starting on the back end. And I think, ultimately to get this done, it's going to take a while. And what the next major paradigm shift is yet to be determined. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people that argue that we'll never finish digital transformation. This will just become an ongoing process. I think we will get to the end of it, and we'll get into a maintenance phase, whether it's 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Mm-hmm. It'll continue to take a while, I think.
Yeah, I have an equal number of people who say that digital transformation will never really finish because technology, keeps moving forward, and no matter when, it's like it's a moving target. There is really no end because there's always something that's going to kind of change the game, if you will, or change the direction of organizations in their efforts. It's kind of like DevOps or DevSecOps. There's people say you don't really achieve DevOps, you utilize DevOps to, but everything is moving so quickly, and it's a culture, and it's more than just, adding on tools. And digital transformation, I imagine, is very similar in that vein. But, to your point, it's got to be about improving the business of the organization as much as it is improving the experience for its customers. It's both internal and external. So, what is it that we can maybe expect or hope for down the road, in future iterations of digital transformation that organizations might want to kind of keep on their horizon, if you will, as they kind of move forward with their digital transformation initiatives, either from that back office perspective or as they look to increase their customer experience, moving forward from where we are today.
I think one challenge that we were facing was this idea of transformation fatigue. And I was starting to get into a lot of meetings and, meeting with project sponsors, and, you'd bring up the T word, transformation, and you'd get don't bring that up, like call it whatever you want, don't call it transformation. And, you'd get into a meeting with key stakeholders, and the minute you mention transformation, you've lost the room a lot of times.
Right.
And I think that is part of the frustration that, transformation success hasn't had a great track record. The numbers are typically around 30% of successful projects. Mm-hmm. I saw a number from McKinsey that I think only 14% of programs delivered a material and sustained improvement. And that just becomes an unsustainable way to operate. And that's why I think there was so much fatigue in that. I think part of the sort of root cause of that was there was too much focus on the technology side. And for folks that have been around technology for a long time, it's always sort of that golden triangle of people, process, and technology. And I think everyone got enamored with technology and forgot the people and the process side. So I think to get sort of back on track and get to a place where transformations can become viable and really push the business forward, there's got to be a rebalancing between that people, process, and technology elements. And I think that's really, what we'll see in the next, 5 years, if you don't like the 10, 15 years more of digital transformation.
Well, I think technology is an easier conversation to have than talking about people and process, because those are the kind of the softer things. And it's less easy for people to kind of wrap their brains around when we're talking about people and culture and process. Technology, it's you can lay your hands on technology. You can wrap your brain around it a lot easier. So to your point, I think technology really was a major focus of early digital transformation efforts. And, now it's almost like I hate to say it, but it's almost like the Jesuit way of adopting technology, or adopting anything. You do it, and then you just, you don't ask for permission, but you just ask for forgiveness later on when things don't go right. So, it's unfortunately, I think a lot of organizations kind of took that approach to digital transformation, and now we're kind of, maybe some are kind of maybe not really pedaling back, but they're throttling back a little bit, and they're taking a much more maybe, I don't know, a better view or a more intelligent view of what they need to do moving forward to kind of right themselves. And whether that's, looking more at the processes involved that helps in that digital transformation effort, or adjusting the culture within the organization to advance digital transformation. Yeah, I agree that those are definitely going to be two areas that are going to be very, very much more important as we move forward in digital transformation. But like I said, those are more difficult conversations for organizations to have.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I think, given the, pre-pandemic, when money was flowing freely and projects were flowing freely, and, you put AI onto any project title and it would get fully funded. Right. I think the pandemic and in the slowdown in the economy and some of the cutbacks organizations have to make, that's allowed, again, this sort of rebalancing of, where should our priorities be placed? How do we make these investment decisions effectively? What is key to make sure we have a successful project outcome? I think we're getting back to some of the fundamentals, which, we had, I think, started to lose a little bit, the past few years.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think all of it, it was kind of, or at least a good part of it was based on the fact that there was so much money out there that was being thrown at, projects freely. They just needed a way to spend that money quickly, so before they lost it. So I think organizations are going to be a lot more thoughtful moving forward. So when you think about digital transformation fatigue, if you will, are we starting to see now organizations looking at it less from a let's not talk about this, we don't want to talk about digital transformation, from that perspective, and more about let's talk about ways that we can advance the business? Is it less of the buzz and more of the rolling up the sleeves and getting it done?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, transformation, was a big buzzword. We've also heard, in the pandemic era that now, automation is the new transformation. Everybody just talks automation now, and, replace transformation with automation, and that's your new operating, orders to march forward with. Mm-hmm. So I think, we'll continue to see these changes and changes and changes in programs move forward, based on, sort of the old, more traditional measures of what makes a successful project, how much value is it driving back to the organization, what's my payback period, all those sorts of measures that, might have been a bit lost in the heyday of the digital transformation age.
Agreed. And we are seeing an increase in mindsets or processes such as value stream management, which really do kind of illuminate the impact of certain, events in an environment and how they actually affect the business as a whole. So I think we're going to be putting a closer lens on the way, not just the way the technologies that are being used in digital transformation, but also the way organizations run their business and how different ways of doing business and what they're doing within the business, such as software development and really seeing how that impacts the business as a whole. Say, if there's a delay in their software development efforts or something, that's got to have a material impact on the business at large. So a lot more organizations are really kind of putting a price tag on that as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of really interesting technologies and processes related to digital transformation in the back office as more organizations understand that it's not just a value to their customers and their employees, but it's also a value to the business as a whole. So I think we're still going to be having this conversation. To your point, we're still going to be having this conversation for a while yet. Okay, John, thank you so much. Great conversation. Love having the conversation about digital transformation. And I think we're going to be having this conversation for a while, like I said. So thanks again. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlene, and happy to join the conversation again on digital transformation whenever it is the appropriate time.
All right, great. I'll hold you to that. So
have a good day.
Thanks, you too. All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned. Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I am here now with the webinars preview. As always, I tell you about some of the webinars that we have coming up on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard in the hopes that you'll be able to mark your calendar and join us for them. We always have so many great webinars on all three of the sites, so I highly recommend that you check out the sites and see what we've got going on. But here are three to hopefully that will pique your interest. The first one is called the State of Infrastructure as Code Security Expert Panel Livestream. This is happening tomorrow, Tuesday, April 6th at 11 a.m. on DevOps.com, and it is sponsored by Sneak, CloudBees, and Red Hat. We all know the adoption of infrastructure as code and configuration as code is soaring, with a rising popularity of technologies, including Kubernetes and Terraform. This means that designing and deploying infrastructure is a developer task now, even if your developer is an infrastructure architect. And just like application code, configurations can use test-driven methodologies to automate security prior to deployment. So in this webinar, we have some experts on automated software delivery and Kubernetes who will share their findings from a recent infrastructure as code survey and discuss some security best practices along the way. Topics of discussion will include security testing throughout the CI pipeline, misconfiguration trends, infrastructure as code remediation patterns, and so much more. The second webinar I want to let you know about is called Monitor Your Migration to GCP Google Cloud Platform with Datadog. This one is also happening tomorrow, Tuesday, April 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, and it is sponsored by Datadog. In this webinar, we will focus on Google Cloud Platform and discuss the ins and outs of a cloud migration. We'll also highlight some common pitfalls and some deployment scenarios. We'll take a look at how Datadog can help organizations plan, execute, monitor, and troubleshoot their cloud migration, regardless of the complexity. So some of the highlights of this webinar include different deployment scenarios with Google Cloud Platform and how Datadog helps you monitor all of them on one unified platform, Datadog's enhanced observability for Kubernetes, and how you can gain better insight into your GKE environment, and how a unified observability platform can help you migrate or deploy across multiple platforms with confidence. The third webinar for this grouping today is called How Release Management is Getting into the DevOps Flow. It is happening Wednesday, April 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, and it is sponsored by Platora. Release management has been a stabilizing force in software deployment and development and delivery, bringing together disparate information to ensure release success by managing scope and coordinating release activities. But as batch sizes become smaller and automation increases in DevOps, release management tools need to adapt. Release management still plays a critical role in DevOps, but it will require new priorities to stay relevant. So this webinar focuses on what is currently wrong with release management and why it needs to evolve to meet the needs of DevOps. Good stuff. All right, that's it for the webinar's preview for today. Check back with me tomorrow when I'll have a fresh new batch for you. Until then, have a great day. Please stay safe. All right, next up, we've got Mitch Ashley speaking with Andrew Manby, who's Associate VP of Digital Solutions at HCL Software. They talk about low-code and no-code in the world of IT and professional developers. We talk a lot about low-code and no-code in terms of citizen developers and non-developers, but it's really a pretty integral part of the IT software supply chain and development chain. So it's a great conversation that Andrew and Mitch talk about with low-code, no-code. So let's give it a listen.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Well, the pleasure today of being joined by Andrew Manby. Andrew is Associate Vice President of Digital Solutions with HCL. Andrew, great to have you today.
It's great to be here, Mitch. Thank you for getting me on your podcast.
Well, absolutely. Glad to have you on TechStrong TV. How about just start with an introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about HCL.
So, I'm by training, I'm a product management and marketing professional. And I've worked at multiple companies, including Informix and IBM. Had some great tours of duty with some great products, including bringing a data integration product to market called DataStage that a few of your listeners and viewers will recognize. And I work for HCL Software, the newest piece of HCL Technology, which is a $1 billion software company that has everything from DevOps to marketing automation, commerce, collaboration software, and today's topic, low code.
Low code, no code. And it's a hot topic too. HCL is a great company. And it's just so many areas that you all cover. It's easy to think of, I just worked with this part, but actually there's a lot more. So topic for another TechStrong TV interview. Well, let's talk about the, low code, no code is a hot topic, and I think for good reason, probably. It's always been growing in prominence and use as we have more and more development happening both in and outside of IT. But the last year has really helped propel a lot of things: movement to the cloud, advancements of Agile and DevOps, a digital transformation. The list goes on, right? The kind of things you can say that years worth of work have happened within, or progress happened within the last 12 months.
Right.
What's your perspective from a low code, no code industry and what customers are doing a year ago as opposed to today?
Yeah. I'm going to give you some sort of examples there, Mitch. So I would sort of say it sort of falls into sort of two categories. You probably heard people define the low code market as really two pieces, right? There is low code platforms for professional developers, and then there's low code platforms for citizen developers. And citizen developers in this realm are really, knowledge workers, people, regular employees at organizations. So the trends that we've sort of seen is really how the low-code platforms have accelerated the new norm, or dealing with the new norm. So on the citizen developer side, it's really thinking about, well, if we're all working remotely, what sort of new processes can we put in place to make sure we can carry on the business in a very remote fashion, right? They could be new processes for leave, acquisition, things that you and I may have not thought about when we did it around the water cooler, but now we have to collaborate remotely. I think the other class is really related to the professional developer, right? And I'm thinking about our Vault MX platform, which is a MXDP, or multi-experience platform for professional developers. And a lot of the companies that we deal with there, they could be, retailers, they could be fast food chains, they could be oil and gas companies, they could be field service organizations. And to some extent, they've all had to do things to enable their new solutions. For example, the propensity for fast food chains to start thinking more about, everyone's got to have a loyalty and coupon program. Thing, right? If you're a retailer and you're using a low-code platform for delivering applications to your consumers, well, you're going to have to think about in-app purchases, cashless commerce. You've got to think about, scheduling pickups for things. Right?
Delivery options. We have
delivery options. Now, that's right. Exactly.
Curbside.
Yeah, curbside. So a lot of those things have happened, and I think that maybe on one side, it's really about trying to make the business more efficient. On the no-code side, or the citizen developer side. On the other side, it's really about what I hear is it's forced people to sort of think about how they bring digital innovation. Partly because they have to survive, but also it's like, well, we need to have sort of people inside the company who can think about what does that mean. So, in that space with the professional developer platforms, you're seeing a lot more innovation around. You get a lot more people from the business involved in deciding what that experience looks like. You get a lot more people involved in designers, right? Because brand experience is very important for those types of organizations.
I'm curious what you think about. It seems like we've entered this era of increased compression. The timing of when we need to get things done and how we have to respond, whether it's like the citizen developer you talked about of saying we've got a bunch of remote people now, what kinds of things do we need to add to our existing or to new applications, as well as professional developers that are using low code as their platform to respond to, in addition to things like curbside delivery. It's also now's the time to make the move into part of the market that we were planning to do a year from now, but we're going to do it this next quarter.
Exactly. Yeah.
That kind of thing has really been compressed. And so people are looking for not just easier ways to get software out, but faster and more effective ways to respond to opportunities, threats, et cetera. Does that make sense to what you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. It's consistent. I mean, how we've responded with that with our platform is really sort of focused on, if you like, 3 value propositions. One of which is we're seeing that, companies want tool sets to, develop, a mobile app and ensure it works across their iOS device, their Android, and now increasingly they want a PWA solution as well. And sometimes that's just purely because they don't want to deal with, the process of putting it into the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, right? And there's a more immediacy about getting that done. So that's the first thing. So the idea that you can build once and you can use acceleration of the tool to get there faster. So instead of months of development, we're talking weeks. The second area, which I think has broader implications for organizations. I mean, Mitch, you know about API management, the drive towards servicification, service enablement for enterprises, right? There's been some great case studies. I know people are talking about the city of Antwerp, right? They have to think to themselves, well, how do I integrate all this together? So that's where, traditional development has sort of been lacking is that middleware layer that describes all of those back-end systems, processes, and data and allows you to orchestrate in a very effective manner. And that's what we see from a lot of our customers is how do I make sense of all of that? Right? Because that's typically where they can gain 60+% more acceleration in their projects. And I think in the last area, it's really about engagement, right? So, it's okay to have, you might have app A from a competitor company A, you have, app B from company B, but it's that brand experience that you get and what innovation can you bring to it. So, one of our largest customers is a retail chain, and what they, faced with COVID is, and what could they do to innovate to make it stickier, right? What techniques could they do? So once you're actually in the store, how could you wayfind around the store to say, where is that tube of paint, right? Or what could I do with this tube of paint? And give me a list of ideas associated with it, right? So wayfinding around a store, linking me to content that I can not only get to through a QR code, but I can actually have a dialogue conversation with the app to get to the resources that I need. So, right. So, I mean, so actually making those toolkits available to developers in such a way through a platform gives you acceleration because frankly, if you had to say, for instance, support Alexa and Siri, how long would it take you to get up to speed with all of these, with TensorFlow and Diagflow and all these other tools to be able to deliver it? Why don't you just pick one tool set that deals with all of that out of the box?
Well, Andrew, you touch on several things, and I had flashes of corporate systems architecture diagrams that look like spaghetti, all the boxes and all the lines, which represent all the integration points to it. And it seems like that's the thing we rehash in our journey in software, is trying to figure out that whole integration strategy. There's been message buses and all kinds of technologies that we've used over the years. And it sounds like what you're describing is more of a platform approach. We've had frameworks too, but you're taking more of a platform approach that both addresses how to do all those integration points and make that easier for developers, but also how to do it across multiple delivery platforms and environments. Right. We put that in, which is a whole nother challenge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Remember the days where we were developing for three different browsers, right? Now we have, that sounds simple compared to today's environment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's sort of interesting. I mean, I think the scenario we're faced with today is interesting. I mean, I remember when the service-oriented architecture was sort of born, right? And that was, there were great things that came out of that, right? In terms of, the idea about a fabric, the idea that you could create some sort of layer that represents the definitions of your business. The idea that, business processes became more important. But I think the pieces that were missing at the time, and we've sort of come on a long way, right? There's the API management piece. How do you manage that? How do you make sure there's consistency and service level quality in all of the services you have? I think also the orchestration piece, right? How do you, in that environment, it's not just about the bus, but it's the intelligence, the brain that goes on the bus. How do you link these together in meaningful interactions? And then I think there's the composition piece of it, which is, I think, where the low-code platform comes into place, which basically says, you know what, I know that I'm going to have to develop for a watch or a kiosk or deal with an IoT device. One of our customers is in manufacturing, right? So they're thinking about trying to create a smarter factory or a smarter worker. That invariably means is that, you've got to be able to think about what's the data coming from all of the systems associated with that, to be able to add value to the application that you're building as well. So there's that component of it. And then it's just to say, as a developer, I want to focus on working with the business to identify what is the goal of this application? How can I make it sticky? And how can I continually improve its performance? And I don't mean performance as in terms of its speed, but how can it be more effective?
It's effective. Right? I was thinking exactly that, Andrew. It's, what we think might be sticky and what ends up being sticky is often an iterative process, right? You have to,
exactly.
You want to try and experiment and sometimes fail, and you need to be able to do that very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the low-code space, that's an element that's sort of come over from one of the other products in our portfolio is a digital experience platform. So in the world of web, journey analytics, personalization, A/B testing is prevalent. And we're also starting to see those things permeate into low code as well. Because certainly, the platforms that we have allow you to gain analytics, right? The sort of typical abandonment stuff is like, well, how long did Mitch use the app for? How far did he get through before he obviously got bored, right? But what we're also seeing is sort of analytics required for, is there a signal that I can detect? Right? Can I turn that into something useful? Can I asynchronously detect something that's happening out there and alert you as a user to that's going on? Maybe it's, maybe you're in a lot of our apps are for, audits, inspection. They could be one of them, one of our apps, one of our customers actually is responsible for doing inspections on oil rigs. So they're literally putting the instantiation of our platform in every single one of their 40 oil rigs and then aggregating everything together. So obviously doing things if they're disconnected because they're, disconnected while they're doing something below the water perhaps, but actually having real-time notifications of what's happening inside the application to the workers, is very important.
I'm really curious about sort of the flow of how people come to HCL, Volt, MX as a platform. Do customers usually come to you as, we started out as citizen developers. We've gotten to a point where that'll take us so far, but we really have to kind of cross the chasm or across the line, if you will, over to more professional development and a platform approach? Or is it more people who know these architectures, very familiar with software and software development, and that's their profession, are looking for a platform that has these kind of capabilities, and this is an enablement capability that they're adding to their technology stack? Does it tend to be one or the other, or some of both?
I think for a lot of what we've seen with the professional developers, it tends to be more of, it's the VP of business innovation at a regional insurance carrier, right? And she has the requirements. She wants an app for her car insurance line, and she wants to put it in place with all of her policyholders, right? And then as part of that is then working with her CTO and her enterprise architects to make the right decision. And and what we see from that is invariably then it's sort of starburst from there into broader deployment. I mean, some of our customers have got one app, right, in the retail example I mentioned, but they have 8 million users, right? And during the time of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, all of their constituents get 1 billion notifications, right? So that's one big, app. But on the other hand, one of our business services customers has 20 apps, right? And that represents the entirety of how they work with their franchise business. And they make that available to 30 plus countries. So, for them, solving the business problem is important, but also for them, it was like, well, I've got a team over here building, if you like, all of the components to build the separate application modules. And then I've got the other people assembling them into localized versions with local translations. And, and everything in between, Mitch, from a size perspective. But I haven't seen too many of them where, it was the CTO going out and saying, I'm looking for a better platform. It gets to that point, but it's always driven from the business, which is refreshing, to be honest.
That's how it should be, right?
Yeah.
That should be. And it's a pleasure when it's that way, because you have to go back and try to make that connection.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the problems that you described, the retail example, right? It's the, holiday season, right? That we're doing 99% of our business in, or whatever the number is a much different challenge in terms of scaling and volume and processing capability, as opposed to, I think what you described in the other scenario is more of what I see happening a lot with low code. It's the permutations of applications that grow and grow and grow and evolve.
Right.
You've got the first application, the first half dozen applications built on this. They tend to take on a life of its own in a good way. And people say, well, great, we already have that. I'm going to build on what I've got. And we've got this tool set to use. And now we know it. We know how it works. We know how to make it work, et cetera. And they just kind of become part of the fabric of the architecture that you're implementing and the team and the organization as a way of, one of the ways, not necessarily the only way, one of the ways that they then are pretty strategic about how they use it.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, we've seen the adoption of the Vault MX platform specifically to build a headquarters app, right? Company moves to a new location. They want to give, part of the welcome package, please download this app. If you want to book a conference room, if you want to find where someone's located, you want to look in the directory, great use of an app. And that's one way that people get onboarded. But I think in the professional developer case, it's more of those sort of strategic type applications that the business is sort of driving from the C-suite. I think not that the citizen developer stuff isn't important to the business at all. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that almost becomes sort of viral, from that perspective. So, what we see is, it happens in our own organization. I mean, we're drinking our own champagne, we're using our own product. And, as we go on, one of the biggest users of our low code for citizen developer capabilities is our sales team and our marketing leader. And in fact, actually, if I get him on, if I could get him on here, he could do a demo of the product, because they use it literally for, doing workflows, some of their content creation. They're using it for surveys. They're using it for sign-up forms. And it's sort of permeated into not only the delivery of some of the software, but it's also, in our client advocacy teams, right? The client advocacy leader puts his hand up and says, oh, by the way, I've developed this app, and now we're using it across all of our client advocacy teams, working with our customers to make sure that we're correctly understanding their specific needs and how we communicate with them. And I'm building that database. So in a way, I think the low-code tool has sort of taken over, some of the things that people would have built in Excel, right? Mm-hmm. Clearly, right? Clearly things like DBase, Microsoft Access, and those types of tools in the past, because now they have something that someone who's a knowledge worker, who has a sense of data management, can build something. I just want to add to that, if that's all right, Jeremy, sure. That one thing I've noticed, and one thing that's sort of propelled, part of our low-code for citizen developer side of our business is really the fact is, people are fed up of sharing spreadsheets around, right? Mm-hmm. And sharing them on SharePoint. And okay, what's the latest version of this file? And is this piece of information correct? And maybe we shouldn't be sharing these files around. Maybe there's confidential information. And I think what low-code tools for citizen developers enables us to do is take that out of what essentially is a file, put it into a database where it's governed, it's protected, and you can build a workflow around it to make sure only the right people have access to it.
I think that's one of the stages of progression. It can be company maturity, it can be sort of business need application, going from essentially getting access, which sharing and SharePoint and things like that are more about, Excel, et cetera, to now we're talking about workflow, because the process is big enough or touches enough people. It's not about just getting access to the data and updating something. It's flow to flow to flow and how those things work. So I think you hit it on a great point there. Another thing I want to mention too, that I think you really, to highlight what you said, is you mentioned earlier about it's not typically the CTO going out and look for our next platform, right? It comes, the fact that your sales team can demo the product and know it almost in a DevRel-like way, of being able to really talk to developers as developers, not saying they are, but they can do that much more effectively, represents how software has really changed and how we think about the creation of that. Because we used to go sell Oracle to the whoever, to the CIO or whatever the product was, to the right senior executive, and then they sort of jam it down in the organization. And it doesn't come in the door that way. It's been open source up through developers and business tools, aka low code, through the business side. And that's the fact. That's the world we live in, I think.
Yeah, it's very true. Just sort of going back to the professional developer and sort of building on what you were saying there, Mitch, that was a really good setup to the point I was just sort of thinking that, I mentioned the business are very interested in, does it do the job? Does it represent the brand image? For the business. And as part of that, the business needs to be involved in the design of the application, right? And getting them deeply involved from day one about what does it look like, right? I mean, the digital designer who could be using, a tool like Sketch or Photoshop, right? They want to make sure that the brand image is preserved. And then I think the other part from the professional developer side that's interesting that you mentioned is, I think the role that the CTO and the CIO are concerned about is, does it have the levels of security that I'm interested in, right? That, that if it's good enough for banks and healthcare organizations, right? Does it meet our needs? The other fact is, when you talk about professional developers, they're looking for acceleration, but there are certain things, Mitch, that you and I know they want, right? They want to know what's the CI/CD source code control strategy, right? They may be using Jenkins. How does this work within their environments, right? How is the testing going to be done, right? And that, I think, helps to distinguish between, some tools on the market and more the sort of professional tools for the AD&D pros. It's not that I think that the days of traditional programming level applications have come to an end. It's just that those types of things are just expected in professional grade low-code platforms. The other thing that's sort of interesting that we bump into, and this is why it's important, from a business perspective, is they have that, as I said, that look in mind, but there are plenty of demos out there that people can share this JavaScript framework or that JavaScript framework. Oh, that looks cool. But when it actually comes to the thing that the CTO and the CIO care about, which is developer velocity, does a whole bunch of open source componentry that I'm going to mismatch together really give you the acceleration that you're looking for at the end of the day. And if you're having to maintain that whole stack and your developers are doing stuff to do that, is that really helping what the business objective was?
That's are you spending your time supporting your tool chain, your workflow pipeline, versus
exactly,
creating value for the business, value for the customer?
Yeah,
but it's been a really good time talking with you. I think we're getting close to running out of time here. I'd love to give you an opportunity to let folks know where they can find out more about Volt MX, the MX platform. Maybe check it out, learn some more about it, and whatever offerings you have. What's the best way to find out about it?
Yeah, the best way to find out, you can, I'm sure we'll provide links around this, Mitch, so people can click on it.
Yeah.
But the easiest way, you can just Google HCL Volt MX, and they'll take you to our website. There's lots of great information there. You can look at the details, see what we do with the capabilities, and build once, deliver everywhere. We'll talk about our integration capabilities, and then also what we do in some of that innovative engagement capabilities around AI, AR, VR, and also NLP as well. And if you're interested in a trial, we can help you with that. And also going back to the coming sort of full circle about some of the conversations, we have this sort of philosophy that the platform's available either as to run a single app or for unlimited apps. So we've actually crafted a rather nice sort of package of Volt MX accelerators where we can effectively go to a line of business person and say, well, what business problem are you trying to solve? And we'll put together the platform, we'll put together the services to be able to deliver the application of your choice within a 10 or 12 week period. And I think that, that opens up a business conversation. Well, you have a business problem, we can solve it within a predefined period of time. Mm-hmm. And then if you get to love the platform, grow your usage from there.
Mm-hmm. It gives you an opportunity to show that direct business value within a short time.
And that's what all businesses are looking for.
Right. So be sure to Google HCL Volt, VOLT. I know you've got your Boston accent there.
I've been working on it for 20 years. It's getting there.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks for joining me today. Andrew Manby, who's Associate Vice President of Digital Solutions with HCL Software. Thanks a lot, Andrew.
That's great, Mitch. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, everybody, that wraps up today's TechStrong TV. As I said before, it was a long broadcast today, but every minute was worth it in my mind. I hope you can join me tomorrow for a brand new episode. We will be having another great lineup of guests, as always. And until then, I hope everybody has a great day. And whatever you do, please stay safe.